I'm gonna have responsibility of that. Yes, I did. I've not had a meltdown. Like, where would I have gone since the time I've been here?
Where's your name?
You can sit on that side if you want. I can move your name tag.
But you're like me, you sit on most boards, you just sit where you want.
I've tried to make it as even as possible, but when there's an odd number of person, it's kind of hard.
Well, last time we had more here and then it was less. Where's Ed?
Ed's not here. He's not on APC. I've got his name tag if he wants to sit up here with you guys. Yeah, that's what I heard too.
They're full.
That's what I heard.
Well, we're going to discuss each one individually. So we may not go in that order. They're going to the hard one first. I forgot to. We'll probably do the chart.
She didn't set out the mediation.
Oh, we did. Who said
That is.
Nobody down here?
Would you like me to get your name tag out? Ed? You can stay and talk to them.
Well, get through this and then I'm here. I have to
He was going to be on the remote.
Okay, Mark.
Am I supposed to be calling off? You never got one of those. Just gave me 618.
Would you, I tried to shut it off and get it restarted, it said it didn't start. Because I had a couple apps on it from fire department. I don't care if you turn the volume down. They will still make noise and let you know that's going on. Don't do that. No, there's 4 o'clock straight out the back door. That's the only thing they got, 4 o'clock.
Right. Cut way on past that, you're gonna go in that pool bar.
That's for sure. Yeah, yeah.
How you doing?
That's all. Assistant there, yeah.
December 11th, we're gonna do a good day. Good. Probably avoid the torpedoes this week. No, I mean January. Yeah. So it's coming to a head, so. Then they'll probably take under advisement to study the bids. No. We've been talking.
Yeah, they're all. Right after.
Which one? Are you in Jonesboro? Where you at?
I live over here. I live down dead end where
Soon, hopefully.
they won't sell. They come by. Because they don't when I try to get her, they look at it, they let it go.
I grew up on West 10th Street. So by the Frenchies. Mike Crouch. He's a German school board. He is on the school board. Yeah. He grew up. 500. and B, yeah.
I live in down this corner of Fifth and Sixth. He knows my thing. I know him.
Really?
Yeah. That's where he grew up.
But yeah, he grew up there, and then his mom stayed there. And then I moved in next. Now my brother's in there.
Your brother's in there now?
Yeah.
He wanted the barber sign out back for the crowd.
Yeah. We won't talk anymore about race. I'm okay here at once, maybe even twice.
All right, we'll get started here. Good evening and welcome. Before we get started here, a couple of housekeeping things. So if you do intend on speaking tonight, we ask that you come up to the podium and sign in your name and the information that's requested there. That way, as we go through and make minutes of this, we can record them accurately. Plus, the mic will pick you up a little bit better for recording purposes. As you can see, the restroom area is being renovated back here. We hope that they would be done. But out through the stall, side door, the garage door, there are porta potties outside. Sorry for the inconvenience, but it's better than what we had last week when we had nothing. So, that. So I guess one of our main goals tonight is hopefully where we can come to a lot of consensus to get into a draft, get out of the draft form and actually get to an ordinance that would be able to be advertised and brought before APC for recommendation for as the county commissioner. So that would be the ideal goal tonight. Whether we get there or not is yet to be seen. So let's start with a roll call, please. Griffin.
Bothwell. Rankin.
Present.
Cottle.
Present.
Cows. Crouch.
Present.
Florence. Gossett.
Present.
Lemming. Maynard.
Here.
Mallory. Knuckles. Todd.
Here.
Reedy.
Here. Now, if we would stand for our pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So tonight is a workshop. Basically an informational, fact-finding, input from different interested parties or parties of solar energy. So once again, welcome. So back at the end of June, July timeframe, the county commission saw a need for ordinance for solar energy systems for the county. So a meeting was held. The area planning department was represented at this meeting. Out of this meeting, the area plan director, Brian Malott, knowing that the ordinance will need to come through the area plan department and through the commission and on to the commissioners, started gathering information from many different counties within Indiana, draw information and other related information, and started compiling that information into an ordinance, a draft of an ordinance. Through additional meetings, that first draft turned it into a fourth draft. That fourth draft coming mainly after the commissioner's workshop that was held here about a month and a half back or so in October. Get that far back already. So we're basically working on the fourth draft, or off the fourth draft today. Area plan and the BZA also held a joint meeting to discuss issues related to this ordinance out here at the fairgrounds. So besides those meetings, we also had other regularly scheduled meetings that this topic came up. Maybe not discussed at length, but at least maybe some progress of where we were standing. So that brings us here tonight. For more input, we can get an ordinance that can go to the public hearing, and then on to the commissioners for discussion or consideration. So there are still a few items that are in the current draft that need to be reviewed. Probably the most important ones or the hottest topics are setbacks and then the approval process, but there are other points within the draft that need to be reviewed. So my hope tonight is to get the ordinance moving along, and for two reasons. We have companies that are out there looking at Grant County to build solar energy systems, and right now we have no controls, no regulations, so they can come in and do whatever they want. And I don't think we want that. Just ask, or through the other meetings that I've attended. So you got a couple of solar farms, Eastbrook, Oak Hill. They went in without any regulation. So if you talk about Oak Hill, they put it in out there and they hit many different drain tiles. Our ordinance draft takes into consideration drain tiles. Okay? So that's what could happen if we just let anybody come in and just do what they want, because they have no guidelines or regulations or things that they're supposed to be doing properly.
Jeff, you said Eastbrook, Oak Hill?
Yes.
Madison Grant.
Oh,
Madison Grant.
Madison Grant.
Madison Grant?
Madison Grant and Oak Hill.
Okay, correct. Stand correct. But maybe what might be more important is that we probably need to get something on the books here. I'm not saying tonight or tomorrow, but relatively soon. And as you know, government becomes sometimes run a little slow. As the state of Indiana last year looked at this, didn't pass anything. State of Indiana is coming back into session. They'll most likely look at this, and at least from what I understand, if they pass something or get stuff on the books, I would assume the counties that don't have any guidance will have to follow state rules, and we may not want that. So I would think if we have something in place, and my understanding would be grandfathered in. So that would be another initiative to get this moving along, so that the state of Indiana doesn't tell us what we need to do or what the rules should be. So, and even Ryan has mentioned, and I've looked over the different counties within the state that we looked at, Ryan looked at, and Bob. No two ordinances are the same. From the approval process, setback fees, some have lots of regulations, some have no regulations, some have no ordinances. So we need to draft something that works best for us here in Grant County. So the fourth draft, which was at the door, is the most current one. It was developed after the commissioner's workshop. So through the workshops and through other previous meetings of different people involved, between solar companies, economic directors, area plan, and other parties that were at these meetings, this is what they, or at that point, felt to be the best at that time. Things that people are consistent, that had a consensus of what they wanted in the thing, in the ordinance. So with that, area plan got the draft, BZA's looked at the drafted ordinance, and we need to fine tune or get our final input before we can get a draft ordinance out to the public for a public hearing. So there's several areas of contention or that still need to be looked at. One would be an approval process, which is in the books, setbacks, a decommissioning component in it, within the development and application process, and then the fees to do this. So I want to try to follow somewhat of the same format for these areas. So what do we have right now? What is in the draft? What BZA has recommended to us, the APC, who has to come up and consider the ordinance, and then eventually make a recommendation to the county commissioners. Public input, and then the APC, us, asking questions and concerns, or our input and our thoughts, and hopefully, as we get through each of these items, we can say, hey, this is probably the way we want to do it. This is the way we want to do it. Remember, this is a consensus building thing to put into the draft, to get a version, that we can do a public hearing. We'll be right back out here because of space. We want a public hearing where more comments could be made before we make a recommendation to the commission. So first up, approval process. So Ryan, if you could maybe explain what we have on the books right now, if somebody wants to come in and do a solar farm.
Okay, so currently, right now, solar farms are considered a utility, which by land use is allowed by special exception in every zone within Grant County with the exception of mobile homes. So the process right now would be to develop in the area plan office, then it would go to the commissioners, and then it would go to the BZA for the special exception. That is the current process that we have in place right now.
All right. So now in the draft, at least this is what was developed all the way through the commissioner's workshop, and the different parties, and at that meeting there was different discussion on this. So what was the consensus out of that, or can you explain the process that at least today in the draft, what we have?
So coming, what we had in the draft, the second version of the approval process was to treat solar farms like a planned unit development, in which the approval order would be pretty much again the area plan office. Then it would go to the area plan commission for recommendation up to the county commissioners for final approval. And again, with all of this, with any abatements or TIF requests, the county council would be involved in that part of the process.
Okay, so then if there was some type of development in one of our small towns that are part of area plan, they would also have a vote, final vote?
Right, well, the commissioners would have the final approval for the unincorporated areas.
Right.
So if we had, well, for example, Sweetser, if we would have Sweetser Elementary decide to build a solar farm, then that final approval would go to the Sweetser County.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So that is the way it currently stands, with the input of through several different meetings. So now, last week,
We go any further?
yes.
I don't approve of that going that way.
Well, we're not
I
here.
feel like the way the BZA, and I sit on both boards, it should go through.
Rex, this is where we're at right now. Now I'm gonna have them talk about the BZA and what their recommendations are, and then we'll ask the public, and then the APC will talk about this. I understand where you're coming from, what you like, but we're trying to stay in an orderly fashion here. Okay, so BZA's recommendation to us out of their last meeting.
So the BCA recommendation out of the December 6th meeting, we would basically create, on the land use table, we would create an ag solar energy system category, in which the approval process for this would be, again, area plan office to begin development. Then we would go to the area plan commission for rezoning. At that time, we would have a public hearing in the area plan commission for the rezoning. It would move from there to the county commissioners for a recommendation, and then to the BZA for a special exception, and again, final approval, and also an additional public hearing. So there would be 2 public hearings with this proposal.
All right, so that is the BZA's. So now I want to open it up to the public. I know some of you have talked before and brought it to where we have today, or have other recommendations. So this is more or less the official documentation in the Area Plan Commission minutes of why a particular method or thought process for adopting. Is there anybody out here that would like to stand and present a reason why they would recommend one way over the other?
I have a question as far as agricultural.
This is, we're only talking about how we approve.
For the agricultural side of it, how you approve the agricultural in general.
How the approval process is for if a solar energy system came in, would be approved.
Would it be different for agricultural versus building in the city?
Okay, within the draft, in the ordinance, there is a spot for residential, so like homeowners, and there are state rules and guidelines governing that as far as setbacks and placements. So there is a whole set of codes for residential use. So that is what is in there. Okay, so that would be residential. And then within that development, there's the bigger systems that are more like 10 acres or under, or the mega systems that are 10 acres and over. Does that help?
Yeah, I guess.
Okay.
Chuck, I got a question.
Make sure you sign in.
Really clarification.
Okay.
Now, are we talking here through the approval process and how we're going to approve the ordinance? Or how we're going to approve?
How you approve a application to build, I guess you can put
Okay.
it.
Okay, and every single one of these sites that would come in would have to go through the approval process?
Right. So what's in the draft right now, I imagine every one of them would have to go on an independent process.
What about the adjacent landowners? Would they have any clue? Or would it be just
Well,
a
some of the
situation where you
landowners-
guys approve it and then you're a bulldozer and they know that it's...
No, because
Each one would go through a public hearing. So in a public hearing, not only would it be published in the paper, but we would actually mail out to all adjacent landowners so that everyone is aware that is involved in the
Would
process.
it be, where would it be published in the paper? Back in the...
It's back where they publish everything.
legal notice,
That's a real hole in the system.
well,
People, I mean, I only found out about this just because I received the letter.
And for this meeting, we actually-
Really no public notice that people recognize what's happening on in their community. So that needs to be sorted up in the approval process, I think. Somehow, some way, people have to have a voice.
Right.
this is,
Can you state your name?
make sure you sign it.
Take your name right there.
Figured you had.
Well, from last.
Chuck, I got a question. I don't think that guy's question was answered. The guy
Yeah,
that
I
came
was,
up on here.
in other counties, they tried to push these through, and you've had to have X amount of acres before you could even start to build. Say you had to have 24 acres surrounding, touching one another to build an 800 acres solar panel farm. So you had to have 2,400 acres of people that were willing just to build 800 or whatever that number was. So that's what I was wondering, us as a county, are we going to have those same stipulations?
Every county has different rules and regulations.
And that's what I
And within,
Do you know what, I haven't seen that.
Madison
You-
County.
That's, okay, they're in the middle of redoing their ordinance.
Right, but that's where they started. That's why I just a question asking if we were gonna have, we just can't go out and build a 100-acre solar farm. I mean, I put in substations for 8 years, so I know quite a bit about power. It makes no difference where that is, it's going on the grid. I understand the school system's helping support the school, costing a few bills. I understand.
yeah, his name, you know, what it is for you.
Thank you.
On behalf of the board, I'd like to,
Ryan, I have a question for you. We just talked about, you know, that we publicized. Would they be a sign out there too, any sign?
Yes,
Property?
yeah, I mean, it would be treated like a normal public hearing.
Okay. So it would be the sign around the property, okay.
So my question, I just have a question.
your name, and then also.
Deborah Kane.
Okay,
I have a question. So just for all of us to understand, the first approval process that you showed left the BZA completely out of it, or would there be times that they would come in there?
BZA, if we had a variance to the area-wide ordinance, would still have to go through the BZA like normal. But these would be treated like a planned unit development as opposed to a variance or a special exception. They'd be treated on an individual.
So wouldn't it just be appropriate just to leave them in there now? Then that way that public, like was stated before, the public has that ability to listen. Because I think, in what situations would come across that the BZA should be involved? Could
If you do it the right way,
it would be
the way
involved
the
every time.
our ordinance are read, we should be included in it. But this is the way the commissioners wants it. I want the public to understand it. Because all we do, I sit on both boards. All the APC would do is give approval, not approval, or no approval to the commissioner. There's 3 commissioners, they would do the job here. If they would leave it the way it was, it'd be the right way to do it. Because you guys would have input, more people would have input in it, to make sure everybody's happy.
And not only that, too, the BZA, what they'll do is, when you have problems with, when you say about land use, we can tell you what the land use is, and where these people can only do a certain amount of things, we make sure that they're doing the right thing, and that's why they don't want us there.
That's why the first draft shows us left out, because that's what the commissioner wants, because they want control of it. But if they would do the way our state wants to be in the county, the BZA would be in it.
Okay, so,
And that's why the BZA is asking us to be put in it on the second one.
okay, so help me understand then, what do you approve? If without the
the APC here, the office will compile all the application permits and then bring to us the project. And then we would make a recommendation, favorable, unfavorable, or no recommendation, and forward it to the county commissioners to make the final decision
If the
on the
BZA,
project.
yeah, if the BZA did it, whatever decision we make is final unless you want to take us to court. So you're leaving it up to commissioners to make the decision.
Well, I believe that's true, and I believe part of it is the area plan commission is made up of 13 members with a representative of every town, representative of the council, representative of the commissioners, superintendents,
And all our town boards, our members.
land surveyors. So we have 13 members from the entire county. Now, unincorporated areas would go up to the commissioners. But again, if something was going to go into Sweetser would have the final say. If something was going to go into Fairmount would have the final say. With the current process, it skips and the final say goes to the BZA.
Okay, and,
And like for Sweetser, our BZA doesn't have a representative on the BZA.
okay, so when someone brings a project, you're gonna see everything from the
whole,
the whole thing.
The whole thing.
The whole study.
part of
You'll
that,
have all this,
part of the ordinance lists everything that they need to accomplish.
Yeah, development will come into the area plan office. It won't move out of area plan to the next step, whatever that might be, until we have all the boxes checked.
But what you're asking, both boards will see both things.
yeah, that's what
And
I,
I tell you, we have steps, we have rules, we've been trying to follow them in the county. Commissioners tells us, everybody says, why ain't you guys following your rules? Well, this would change the rules. And I sit on both boards, and I sit on APC. Last year, we at least had 3 different things that come through us. And we look at the paperwork, and we say, why is this coming to us? It should be through the BZA. It's because of the way your commissioner sets it up. And a lot of times I disagree with that. It should go through the BZA. We do the studying, we do everything. All they're given, non-approval, approval, APC, and it's leaving the commissioners to make the final decision. Why should it always be them making the final decision? We're going to go through the way our order said, and our books in the county. We should follow our order, not be changing our orders. Just because I'm an elected official, and I want it that way.
All right, Rex, I think we understand what side you're coming from. And
Well,
I
I
understand.
know what Ryan and you guys are coming from, and I want the public to know.
So, this is about both presenting
You're
your
sticking
sides.
on the commissioner's side, you should be sticking on our side, the order it belongs in.
Okay, hang on a minute. Let me tell you, I'm Ed Hartman, I'm BZA chairman. I proposed, and the BZA approved
Right.
and forwarded to the APC a different plan after seeing the plan that was proposed, okay? And it was for the area plan to bring the application to the APC, and they would review it, and then they would recommend it or not recommend it, and send it on to the commissioners. The commissioners would then review it, and if they wanted to, they would approve it and send it to the BZA. The BZA then does consider land use. That's one of their priorities. And they also consider public people that are impacted nearby. If they're substantially impacted, that's a consideration that the BZA, by their rules, has to take into account. Okay. Then if we were to pass it, then it's done. If we turn it down, it's done. Unless somebody wants to sue. Okay. But that is the process, and the reason I went with that, and our board unanimously approved it, was because it would get a much more thorough review. It would come through the area plan office for the application. It would go to a 13-member board to pick it apart and decide if they wanted to approve it. That would also be in a public hearing. Then it would go to the commissioners, who also have an open meeting. All their meetings are open. They would then make a recommendation and move it to the BZA, and then it would be a second hearing. And this would be a 2-month process to get that accomplished. It slows it down a little bit, gives people a chance to be aware of what's going on. And then the BZA, being a 7-member board, would accept this proposal and vote that way or deny it. And that's what we wanted to do. That's the message we wanted to send, but it's a more thorough review, and it brings us all in it. And we're going to live with this decision for 35 years. This is a big decision. We're going to take thousands of acres, potentially, of farm ground out of use. That's basically shutting down that business. And we're going to put a new business on it. And there's a lot of things that we need to consider. We're just beginning to get up to speed on this, and I think we need more time, because there's more things to consider that we haven't discussed at all. Like how much prime farmland,
Okay.
how much prime farmland are we willing to sacrifice?
Well,
That would be
you
in
know-
the ordinance.
We have an ordinance, they'll develop a plan that will be submitted to however route it goes. I'm one to believe that farmer owns that land, he should be able to do things with it that he wants.
It's agriculture zoned farmland.
Right.
Farmers know it
But
when
right
they
now, our
buy it,
land use says that you can put that in any zoned area right now,
with
except
the
mobile homes.
special exception. Apply the BZA.
Yeah.
You had a,
That's a consideration.
They can't just build a chemical plant there, right?
My question would be, without offending anybody, it seems to me that everything that I've heard from the BZA is against solar farms being installed.
No.
So,
No.
I'm not finished yet.
No.
So my question would be, how does the farmer have assurances from the BZA that his request to have a solar farm installed on his property will get a fair hearing from the folks that say, mine is the final decision that will be made?
What
Because
is a fair hearing? When both sides are heard?
Well, you seem to have a vision that you're going to have a large number of people that will be opposed to it.
We
which
don't
has
know
not
that
been-
for
Which
sure.
has not been verified yet.
You know,
But I don't-
we passed a solar
I'm
farm
not doing
in Gas City. I know, but we're going back and I didn't mean to just cut you off. But I didn't know if you knew that we did pass one in Gas City. Just outside of Gas City. Okay, so we are not against solar, but we say this is questionable. And we have some reasons to believe
I
that.
just
and
wanted
we
to
want
know
those
what your
explored.
assurances were to the farmer that he would get a fair hearing.
You get a fair hearing, but there's no assurance it would be passed. Just like,
we do like anything, any property we look at, we would listen to the farmers and say, what is our rules up in the county for the farmer to do what he is doing right? And then we would listen to the citizens that lived around that area and put both votes and say, what is right?
So how do you make that final determination?
based on impacts as well as what the general good is.
Yeah, the impact, right? Because, you know, it's gonna hurt the people out there. If it's
Right,
gonna
I'm just
really
trying to,
hurt.
I'm just trying to understand
Yeah.
what the rules are that you use to make the decision about him.
Because what we do, we look at both sides to see what the impact could be. If it's gonna be very bad for the citizens around there, we might say no. But if we feel like it's the farmer that's doing what he's supposed to do, and it's not a big giant impact, gonna really hurt the people around there, I agree, the farmer should
But
have.
that seems vague to me, not knowing the procedures, that
Because-
seems very vague.
Because when you guys, I'm on APC too.
I'm sure a lot of you vote.
Yeah, I can't because I'm a citizen.
Yeah.
A council member or somebody else. can instruct. So when it goes to us, we're really, our recommendation don't mean nothing. It just goes back to the commissioners, they can take it or not take it. And so what I'm trying to do, and like the BCA say, we already have certain rules in the county. It should go this way, this way, and this way. But the commissioner wants to change that.
All right. We've heard that several times. I think we got the point on that. Is there anybody else in the public that would like to make a comment or direction or?
I have a question.
Name and that, or name or whatever they're all
My
asking.
name's Liz Mills, and we got this letter that saying it was gonna bring our property values down. That solar farm that was, it's gonna be buttoned up against our property. And everybody's asking me, well, if it's something that's gonna benefit people, how is it gonna bring your property values down? And if it is, how much?
Okay, those are all those are all variables. We do not, we know there's people that have, there's companies out there looking. We don't have any known boundaries, as far as I know, exactly where these things are looking. There's studies out there that can probably tell you one way or the other, that it will hurt or it'll help. All those things are taken into consideration through some of the different steps within the proposed ordinance.
Ryan, didn't Ryan say you had a person that Karen or somebody that was supposed to be checking on that?
Yeah, we've actually, I sent out to, I believe, BZA also in the APC, an impact study, economic impact study that was done northwest of Indianapolis on 2 counties.
Russian, I think it was Russian.
Yeah. Just trying to find something that was close. In that impact study, basically, there was no significant drop in property value. It gave a negative 5% to a positive 5%, with a median of actually a 1% increase in property value. I've also talked to Robin, Rhonda Wiley, to look at property value losses around the current solar farms that are out there. She's actually doing reports and said that she has seen no significant property value decrease in those properties around, but she's actually going to study it even more. So, I mean, we are doing things. The economic impact is something that we could actually get into the ordinance to do on all projects. So we are looking at that end.
Okay. So that is not exactly what segment we're in right now. This is for the steps to approve what we're looking at. Okay.
John Needler.
Okay.
Just listening, property studies, look who's paying for them. Going back to past history, look who is paying for the property studies. They can go both ways, like you said. You got to look at who's paying for them, pro or against. Kept talking about farmers farm ground. From what I've heard, what I've read, what I've seen is a lot of this farm ground that's going out is not farmers owned. It's people, kids who have inherited the farm ground, are out-of-state owners. Same thing can happen to Grant County. Solar farms will pray, they know, they look, they'll see who's not a farmer. Grant, some of the biggest farmers in Howard County, we're for that right now. There are farmers that are for it. Now, a lot of the farm ground is not farmers in.
Okay.
So I'm just,
okay.
I just hear.
Yeah, but that is a different area that we're really not talking about right now, because we got at least 4 or 5 things that we'd like to accomplish tonight. Anybody else on the approval step process? Okay, so we'll turn it to more the Area Plan Commission, the APC, for discussion on how do you feel we should go as far as recommendations of what Ed explained, going that route, or going through what would be a different route, but a plausible route, or a doable route, a legal route, I guess. After the work, the development's been fully developed, it's presented to APC, then on to the commissioners or local town councils that are part of APC. So, Ron, you got any, or what we got over here? You got anything, Myron, as far as an opinion of one way or the other, or thoughts or things like?
We're talking about what, BZA?
Yeah, they do what Ed was talking about, that route, or the current draft that's been thought about, and that's what's been crafted as far as bringing it before APC for a recommendation to the county commissioners and or out to the towns for final approval.
Yeah, as I read this, I wholly agree with it. I think that's the proper way to go. That's my thought.
Jim, what are your thoughts or thoughts on approval process?
Well, I like the BZA's recommendation.
Jerry?
I'm on the fence. I kind of lean towards the BZA recommendation.
Heath, right?
Yes, I'm sorry. being new to the area plan, I don't have an opinion yet because I don't quite understand how everything works together yet.
Okay.
But I think that the more people involved that are helping make a decision on the use of farmland, I think that's a good thing. I'm vague as to what Ed is going to be using for its criteria, of whether it's a good or bad idea.
Right.
A lot of our cities, we will ask the community, like,
Yeah.
and say, what are you guys thinking?
But you have the final decision,
Yeah.
so at the end of the day, I want to know how that's
Right.
being made.
And should there be more detail, I'm sorry, should there be more detail put into that in order to clear up his concern?
Well, we're just going around and I got some discussion or opinions too.
I like the BZA's input, but I would say if it come down to a vote to either deny or not, it should be a vote from everybody as a whole. So the APC and the BZA also. So if they had 6 members that said no, but we had 12 members that said yes, that would be more of a public vote and not just 6 members that didn't want.
That was the final one. I don't know if that is set up or could even be, I don't know if that would work.
Be challenged legally.
Right. What we're trying to do is afford legal challenges too. So Rex, I know your decision, you need to explain it any more?
I just feel like we should follow the orders
That are on the books now, basically, is what you're saying. I represent the town of Sweetser, all right? Jerry represents, you represent town, you represent town. We got a couple other ones that aren't here tonight. So I did ask my board last Thursday at our meeting, hey, this is coming up. What do you want? You know, we represent, or I represent the town of Sweetser. And they told me they wanted us as a town to have final approval. Okay? We don't have the town of Sweetser, just because of the way that body's made up, does not have representation on that board. Okay? So they felt that they would like to have final approval of something that was in our town that was being considered. Okay? So in that case, then, there we go. If it's an unincorporated, it'd be the county commissioners making that decision. If it's something that was being developed in Sweetser, we would have the final decision. Out in Upland, Van Buren, that town board, Fairmount, Jonesboro, they would have the final decision for development in the town. The differences are, we're all elected officials. Okay? So we should be holding to what our people want. I also see where the BZA, they're all appointed citizens and different things. They're not elected officials. So maybe they would have more of an objective opinion because they don't have any ties. I don't have to get reelected, you know, type thing. All right, so they may actually make a more balanced judgment.
But next time I'm up for reelect, next time I'm up for approval, it's the town or the city of Jonesboro don't like me. Rex, I don't want you because you're not doing what I want.
Well,
that could be the word.
well, you're a citizen representing a particular entity or group, whether it's the county commissioners or county council, and you should, I would think, although you can be independent, you should, I would think, represent the values that they want. Because they are the elected people representing the people, and it should trickle down to some extent. Not to be a yes man or a yes lady,
I mean,
but yeah.
we gotta, like I come from Jonesboro, I gotta look the way Jonesboro feels, and plus I gotta look the way the citizens feel.
Mm-hmm.
You guys are only looking one way, what's best for the town or the city.
Well,
Or it's like,
that may not be true.
no, but that's the way
Once
he's
you're on
worded
a
it.
board,
Yeah, but-
once you're on a board, a lot of times you reflect based on what is happening on that board in that meeting. And well, you know, we make a decision for the
Yeah.
county, and we don't have to worry about losing our salary.
Yeah.
We are volunteers.
Yeah, and we don't have to worry about being reelected. You know, if we step on somebody's, you know, we try to make the best decision for the citizens and the business or the farmers or whoever it is. You know, that's what the BZA is trying to do. We're trying to listen to both sides. Just because you're an elected official, we're like you guys. We're here trying to do the same job, listen to our communities and listen to the other communities what they want. Because if the community said, no, we don't want this in the area, we would take that into consideration and then listen to the people, and the people might say we want it in the area. And what's the best situation and the best answer? And that's what the BZA did. We have certain rules already set in this county, how steps should go. And now somebody wants to change them steps, and everybody keeps saying.
And I do believe, because looking through all the different ordinances that are out there, there's many different ways to approve the process. And granted, right now, our process kind of lends to what you're saying.
But that's why we come up with this, okay, give everybody a chance to have their opinion.
Not that I want to dwell on what other counties do, because we're Grant County and we get to
Right.
decide. But the overwhelming majority of counties in this state run through the BZA.
I did see that it did tend to that, at least from what I could tell, but there are other methods or the other.
I like having you all involved, and the approval process, if you get approved, commissioners approve it, by the time it gets done,
It should have been reviewed.
approved twice. That does carry some weight, even though we're viewing the evidence in that hearing, we'll be viewing the evidence and making a decision. It does carry some weight that other people have approved it. The thing I don't like about the change that is being suggested is you give one approval from the APC and two guys, 2 out of 3, to make a decision.
Either gals.
Yes, 2 out of 3, based on, you know, a citizen board. And when we watched the solar summit, the solar companies were highly in favor of just having the commissioners decide. And they absolutely were bold enough to say that reduces our risk. If we've gone to the work of making an application and paying fees, we want it approved. And they felt they had a better chance with 2 people than with the citizen board. So it's something to consider. And changing this legislation is the commissioner's responsibility.
Right.
And it's changing it to where they make the decision. And there's a lot of tax money involved here.
If there are ordinances on the books that indicate the order that this should be going in, what mechanism are we using to change that? It seems like
I'll let Ryan kind of explain that, because all this swirls around my head too much sometimes. But Ryan?
Well, we are basically developing the ordinance. So it's technically not on the books yet. We are actually making the process generally for an ordinance is area plan goes to the recommending body of the APC and then goes to the commissioners. Once I get commissioners' approval, then I travel it to the towns for town approval for incorporated area. So right now, we are developing an ordinance. So.
But it doesn't need to follow the.
I think he's asking.
It doesn't need
to.
It doesn't need to follow what most of our other ordinances are doing.
Because again, it's not yet an ordinance.
And can the towns approve what is incorporated and the BZA approve the unincorporated areas? That's not possible.
Yeah, you get 2 separate.
All right, so then the other little caveat is, because we do recommend to the county commissioners, we draft all this, whether it goes with recommendation of favorable after a public hearing, and we do recommendation of favorable, unfavorable, or no commitment, it goes to the county commissioners. I don't like that. We're gonna change this, and it may end up back to what they want.
Oh, yeah.
It's gonna come back, go through another public hearing, we either make favorable, unfavorable, or no commitment or whatever, then it goes back and they'll pass it. Now, that could be the problem. That could actually happen unless they really sit down and analyze what Ed and BZA kind of has recommended, and a few members here kind of agree that that may not be that might be the proper way to go. I'm still hung up on the fact that me representing Sweetser, I think we would like to have the final say. Although, I mean, within that process that Ed's talking about, it does come to us, because I'm representing on APC, where we can state our case. Because I know many times we'll sit down and say, hey, Jerry, this is affecting your town. How does your town board feel? And we do, with our consideration, value each independent city or town, I should say, and what they feel. So we do have some input, we just don't have the final say.
But if the municipality wanted to be able to make those decisions, wouldn't they be able to do what Gas City's done and just not be part of area plan?
Well, you could opt out. So it's like City of Marion, they're not in it.
Yes.
Gas City.
It just seems if you're part of area plan, then you as a municipality are saying, I want them to help make the decisions for us.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So one reason why we all us little small towns belong to area plan, so that we don't have to have our own building department, enact all these different ordinances, inspect and control. It's a lot for a small little town to undertake. Just ask Swayze, they are independent. And they have a building that fell down on State Route 13 that's still standing out there.
And they don't belong to us.
So there's more benefits to me, in my opinion, being part of BZA or part of area plan and having that, just like the last meeting we had with the electrical issue. You know, your little town would be the one that would be inspecting that and improving it. So we have highly qualified inspectors and things like that taking care of that stuff for us to make sure things are done right.
Thank you.
So Jerry, you were kind of uncommitted there. What you have anybody have any change of hearts or thoughts or?
If I had to vote, I'd lean towards the BZA being involved, yes. That's my opinion.
Well, it looks like we have at least, anybody clicking in there?
I think someone just logged on.
Okay, none of those are board members, so. So it really does look like we got 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4. And you guys, I'm not too sure. I think Brian, you got any other thoughts or comments?
I'm with you though, having the town board, a small town, and have final approval. But where that comes into play.
Well, it may not if we have more people, but it may go to the commissioners that they may say, hey, maybe there is something to this. I mean, they'll review this tape. I don't see them on there, and I don't know if any of them are out there. They will be reviewing what we're talking about here. And maybe, yes, they'd like to see it go this route, but maybe they'll have second thoughts that, you know, maybe that's not so bad. Or they said, nope, we're going this way, and they'll rewrite it and send it back to us.
Because whatever we send to them, like you said.
Because we're an advisory board, basically. We're an advisory to the county commission.
But if I had to choose one, I would choose the BZA's proposal.
Rather than final town approval?
Well,
Yeah, you were just saying that you'd like to have.
I want the final town approval, but I still think for Fairmount, final town approval,
Yeah.
but as a whole, I think they should be involved.
Which is not a method right now.
It isn't.
Yeah. Well, where do we go on this, guys? It looks like we got more people leaning towards to go through the BZA. So we would rewrite the draft to show that. And if the county commissioners do not like it, they can strike it and reword it and send it back to us. But I guess this would kind of show more of what the board is thinking of a process. Is that what I'm getting? I'm seeing nods and nods. And you're still trying to take it all in.
If you were asking what you were asking, Ryan, I would prefer as an upland town board member to have the final say over the BZA, but I definitely understand where they're coming from and why they would like to have input. So I would be, I guess, more in favor of the town approval.
Okay. That's 2, 2.5, 3. And Jerry, you're still leaning more BZA or? Okay. And like I say, so we're missing Upland's representation here tonight. I'm sorry, Matthews. I'm almost out that far. Matthews, Jonesboro. And is that it? Okay. So we can, because this, so if we were to change the language in the draft, to go more to the BZA route, there's still time to change because it will be advertised. We will have a public APC. That can all be discussed then. And if there are more people that might be leaning towards town approval at the final step, it could still be adjusted at a public hearing and then forwarded on.
Yeah.
Right? Yes.
Going with the BZA doesn't necessarily mean that the towns are going to be disappointed. More than likely, what the BZA says, the towns will be happy.
Town representation's welcome at a meeting.
Pardon you?
Town
Well, yeah, because it'll be a
representation would
public,
welcome.
right, public hearing, so I guess we could come and say, this is the town truth, or we totally agree with it, or no, we do not like it unless they put these conditions on it or something. But all that should have already been addressed through the development plan, because if it affects the city or town, they're going to have to buy off of some things potentially. And then through the public hearing and APC, where those issues can be addressed. So there really should be no surprises when it gets to the BZA.
No, usually if it's in your corporated like you guys are already giving your approval toward that. And we're just making a decision, listening to both sides. We agree with the town or not agree with it.
The BZA can also write conditions in when they're passing it, if they pass it. They can write in conditions that the solar company would have to abide by. That's the BZA's option.
And that can be done in the other route too. I mean,
Yeah, that could be.
so it's not like,
But if
you're right.
something comes
But
up
yes,
in the final
if
stage,
something comes up between APC's approval, the county commissioner's agreement, something out of left field came in.
something in the hearing that the town wanted, you know, a condition can be added. We're not advertising for that actually, but it's part of the process.
Right. All right. So right now, it's team 10 to me, it looks like it's leaning toward BZA, right? Is that consensus?
BZA recommendation.
Yeah,
BZA.
Not the original.
No, not the original concept and
Right, the new recommendation.
what you wrote up and things like that.
On our last draft, we added the third extent, industrial. Where industrial, if an industrial site is chosen, that's by right.
Okay. So this is
Okay, a special exception under the zone for solar on ag land.
So I noticed the third bullet point, area plan commission, which would be us body right now, for rezoning. Do we really need to rezone?
Yes. That's your guys.
Well, I know, but do we really need to rezone since everything's allowed except the mobile home?
Well, in this one, not everything's allowed. In this proposal, the ag solar has a special exception, and then industrial is by right.
Okay.
So you can't just go throw it in a residential area.
Well, would that, Ryan, would that knock off residential building? Would that? Or is this only related to things that are 10 acres or more?
Well,
It's not residential.
it's labeled major minor.
Major, like, okay. So residential would be minor, and they follow the regular standard building codes that are in place.
Residential building codes.
Okay, because we don't want to do something and then.
Yeah.
I think it's a good idea to check thoroughly out about those kind of things. This is a very complicated ordinance, and ordinances don't come out all the time. This is your first, right, Brian? Okay, this is a very complicated ordinance. I would really like to see this reviewed by someone that is a specialist in these, ordinances. To make sure that we've got everything right.
Well, this will all get, it'll all get reviewed. Kyle will review everything.
All right.
Well, I mean, maybe an outside specialist.
Okay.
Yeah, having Kyle Persinger review it is not the same thing he suggested.
Right.
By any stretch of the imagination. In fact, the gentleman on the end, I apologize for not knowing your name, mentioned last meeting about trying to get feedback from some of the other communities and understanding exactly what they've gone through. One of the big things with this is, and I mentioned that anybody's here, I've done some of this maybe retread, but you got to go into this with your eyes wide open, because what you're going to impact here is going to potentially impact generations. And so it's important to find out what works, what didn't, because you can probably find out what didn't work as well as you did find out what did work. But I think it's important to get as much feedback.
Well, that's why we're doing a lot of this. Hopefully get a good draft.
I'm not an expert.
I don't know if it'll actually go through like a high stakes lawyer and all the ifs, ands, and buts.
So be more conservative when you do these type of things, and understanding that you can take a step back, and then if things aren't working, then you can move to it. But once you open up the floodgates, there won't be any much opportunity for you to do much about it. That's my thoughts. So, not having the zoning board involved with the zoning seems not logical.
Well, APC is responsible for zoning. They're responsible for special exceptions and variances.
All right. Any more discussion on the approval process? Okay, so next up is probably another big one is setback. So Ryan, really we didn't have any setbacks in the current thing except for residential stuff. So what do we currently have built in within the draft?
Proposed, as you can see, and we talked about this last time also, we had proposed 250 feet setback for non-participating dwelling to solar equipment. We had taken 32 now counties. The average setback was 228 feet, and I did make the adjustment for Madison County to 500 off of 200. If we include Adams County is actually at 1320. That number goes up to 263 feet. We have a BZA proposal to go 1450. And again, I would note, and I talked to Mr. Hartman about this also, that would put us at the largest setback in the state.
Okay. So the draft shows at 250. BZA recommending quite a large jump to 1450. So now I'd like to have some public input, and then the APC will. So public input on setbacks. This would be a solar farm and panels, kind of like what you're talking about, how close, and different things like that. So right now we're proposing, or the draft proposes 250 feet back or setback. So if you have a house, the closest solar panel, right, or any type of equipment to make it work has to be at least 250 feet from that house. Not from the property line, but from the house. Now within the property of where the solar farm is, there is a buffer zone there. From the property line back, I believe it's 50 feet before they can start building solar panels or whatever. And within that buffer zone, is where screening goes, whether it's a fence, an earthen mound, or a combination with shrubs or whatever to do a screening process. So that if you are a neighbor, hopefully it should be screened or would grow into a nice screen. And like Ryan was talking, each development is different. So if you're building right here, the land lays and where a house is, and each one could have a different combination of a screening process. Or within the ordinance, there's noise levels that have to be met. So if they're planning on putting one of their whatever, birds or whatever that homes, it needs to be also far enough away so it doesn't affect the property owner. So each one, each development should be taken into consideration, each individual landowner, homeowner around that development, so that it's tailored to that area. You know, so if we just throw 1,000 feet, well, that may not solve all the problems. It may be okay for most, but it may be, but we got all kinds of combinations of other things that have to also fall in place to make it work within the ordinance. So I'll take questions or comments or concerns from the public. We got a lady up. Can you should come up here and sign in so we get you recorded here.
Linda Glassmore.
Okay.
Okay. The question came up when you have a setback and then this person wants to build another building in between their house and the property line.
Okay.
What happens to the owner of that property? Are they going to be allowed to build a building there?
So if you own a house that's not part of the development, and they put a solar farm in, currently up to whatever established setbacks, and you want to build a garage or an outbuilding between your house and that, and then it'd be closer than the setbacks,
Yeah.
my understanding, you have no problem to do it. Because you're not the one, they got to stay away from you, basically,
So
right?
it's
They
a-
got to stay away from you so far, not so much you staying away from them.
It's
Once
going to
it's
say
developed.
that, it's going to say that in there somewhere.
Yeah, it's a one-way setback. So setbacks on your property would meet normal setbacks.
You can get as close as you want to it. They can't get as close as they want to you.
Okay.
Because I'm the one that asked that question last time.
Yes.
And Ryan answered my question, because I was afraid when we said the 250 feet, that if you had enough property, say towards that solar panel, put you a garage, and you didn't have a garage, and you could fit in our rules,
Yeah.
was you gonna be able to put it in, or that would go to cut your throat?
Yeah.
And he said, no, you could still put that garage in.
Okay, and that's going to have, that goes to one of the board's area plan.
Well, if you were to
For
do
us,
an outbuilding, you
yeah.
gotta get a permit, and then
Yeah.
they'll make sure that you're within your setbacks.
Yeah,
And as long as you fit
Okay.
within your setbacks.
so that solar farm isn't going to have any,
No effect.
No, I don't think
Has anybody seen any of the contracts of these potential?
No, we've got no development.
Okay. Okay, but my issue is, just like she said about the house, now she didn't mention the fact that she's gonna build a building, correct? Okay, what happens if you have an existing building that burns down, can you build it right back in that exact spot?
Yeah.
Yeah, this will not affect your property setback. Your property will have normal setbacks.
That was my worries.
What you're talking about, Lois, is where we ran into non-conforming uses, to where we've had a building that was present prior to
Right.
zoning ordinance going into effect, that's burnt down, and then when we try to rebuild, we find out we can't build that type of
That's
building. So that's completely different.
Now, Nate, go ahead.
Oh, no, my question was, is the setback from the structure itself instead of from a property line?
That's a good question. I think some of them have it different ways. This seems to be a more common, at least from what I've seen, more from a structure work.
It just seems like from a property line might be easier. He's chopping.
Okay.
Property line might
Sign in and stay.
It's a good question. My name is Tom Scoder. I represent potential solar development in the county. We have a number of supportive landowners currently with us at the moment. So the theory there is a currently back from property lines in the ordinance. It's 50 feet. And if, say, we're talking about a project in totality, if we're have farms, neighboring farms, that's when we're looking at that 50 feet. If that were to expand past 50 feet, that would really eat into a potential project's buildable area. So the priority is to find that additional setback area for a residence itself to give them a little more breathing room and to also have that vegetative buffer that we discussed. So there is a property line setback. It's just smaller than that 250 feet. Otherwise, you know, you're really encroaching on any given farm parcel and the project wouldn't be able to be built in the first place.
I think I understand what you're saying. The setback is from the property line to your structure on the farmer's property. That's
correct.
With the development.
So, exactly.
And then to get more distance from a neighbor, you go 250 feet, in this case, from wherever the first solar panel or structure is at to the house to get your bigger distance. Where if you were to put the 250 on the property line to where the first solar thing is, that's a lot of property that won't be used unless they can still till and farm in that area. You know, around that setback. So I see where, but that setback would probably go the whole course all the way around the property. In your house, they only go 200 feet where the dwelling is, and then so I can see.
But I do want to emphasize there is a property line setback currently in the ordinance. That 50 feet.
50 feet. For their part, where they can build. And then we do the other one for the dwelling, get the house further away of distance. So if there is a house that is, let's say, 50 foot from the property line, then they're actually going to have to go 100 more feet or 200 more feet, because right now it'd be 50 plus to get to what they need. They'd have to go further into the farmer for development.
So that house could be on the edge of the property right now, and that 250 feet would span further into that participating farmers, so that would currently, but that's, you know, around the home.
So wouldn't we want to protect that landowner as opposed to just anything?
You're talking about the homeowner there, not part of the development.
What you're suggesting is that they would be able to build right up to the property line of a lot of folks in the country.
Well, they gotta stay 50 feet back.
Now, only for the solar panels, because if you take a look at 153.714, item number B, they can put the power lines right up along the property. Says so right here. So yes, we got a setback, but I think, again, I know I'm being redundant here, and I'll continue to do so, is that we really need to protect the individual landowner and allow them a way to work within the boundary. And if they want to work with the power company, say, to come closer, then allow them to have some opportunity to have a say-so in how they are being impacted directly, as opposed to just, because once it's written, it's written.
It may be written, but then it also has to go through the development process, and if there's objections, they will need to be addressed.
But will that be in the contracts of the solar company?
Are you talking about setbacks?
Not the setback, just what you just said.
I fully support larger setbacks than 250 or 50 feet. It is not reasonable. And, I mean, if you live in the city and it doesn't impact you, then I can see how that it might not, you might not think about it, but I don't even know what's gonna be next to my house. I'm here just because I'm concerned about of what it does to our community. And face it, you're here to serve the community's not here to serve you.
And that's, you know, again, most of these are gonna be taken on a case-by-case basis to where we're looking at stuff like, you know, hey, this is right there next to your house. I mean, we're hoping during development and through public hearings that these type of issues get brought up by surrounding and adjacent owners.
Because like Brian said, each site's gonna be different.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, I might have a flat piece of ground, no creeks, no nothing, and then it's gonna be different. And I might have some that have a creek, something else, and like you said, a property with a building so close, they're gonna have to do different, you know, and they know it when they come in.
I just think the setbacks are a pivotal piece of this.
I think we're gonna find in some cases setbacks aren't even gonna matter because there may be a drainage tile going through there that they've gotta be 75 foot off of that to begin with. I mean, it's really going to depend on location and what's there before they can even get into development.
I think just one other thing I want to mention, if we're talking about, you know, significantly larger setbacks, that eats into what could be developed, and that means that more land would then need to be a part of the project, so the project then becomes larger. There's a middle ground there where you're trying to optimize and keep it consolidated, condensed as much as possible.
I appreciate that. However, it could mean that you just moved it over 1,000 feet.
The whole project.
I mean, it could just mean as simple as you're moving it 1,450 feet. So let's not always think that this means that it's a no-go. Last time it was mentioned it would provide a moratorium, which that term was used. And I don't necessarily agree with that. I think that there may be a way to work within the community for us to have future solar development. And then the individual landowners are, the adjacent landowners in particular, they're undoubtedly going to be impacted.
The last meeting we were at, when there was a number that was given, that basically someone said, if we use this amount of setback, that it's going to prohibit solar to come in. And I'm not trying to pick what is that number? Or is there a number?
I mean, we're looking at an average across Indiana, and that's for a reason, because many counties right now in Indiana are looking at this long-term investment and trying to find that balance with solar companies, and it's coming out right around 220, 250 feet.
Well, so I'm not trying to pick a fight with the BZA.
Sure.
But when the BZA comes with a recommendation to put the setback at where the previous folks said it would make it nearly impossible to put a solar farm in, then it says to me that the BZA is not all that interested about having solar in, which is stepping on the property rights of the farmers. And so I look at, okay, what BZA is saying to me is they want this setback, and this setback said, hey, solar's not welcome.
It would send a signal, you know, if we're talking about 1,400 feet, that it would be next to impossible to develop. So from our perspective, you know, that is going to be incredibly challenging to overcome for a solar project, and I would say I'm getting like a similar signal with the setback.
So Ed is frustrated at me for bringing that up, but I don't think that you're playing fair, because you set a parameter which won't allow it to come in. That's why I don't think that.
Well, that's their recommendation, right?
Right, I don't think a solar farm would get a fair shake by the BZA.
I don't know that would prevent them.
All right.
That's what he said.
It sends the signal.
And I see where he said it, get too far back.
And it's going to use a lot more land to do the same size project.
And that's gonna cost them more money, and I wouldn't want to run them out of town, just because we have too far setback.
Okay.
And
Maybe
Tom,
you rent
generally in
from
rural,
the fee.
the higher the setback, the more people affected. Is that the general rule?
Well, yeah, I mean, logically speaking, the higher the setback, the more land you're gonna need to use, right? You can't use as much of a given parcel for a project, so chances are you're gonna be then going up against more homes than you would have otherwise, if you're not optimizing that project.
And when you're set that far off, does it increase your costs as well?
Well, it just doesn't make development feasible because, you know, when you're talking about the number of homes, there's just not enough area that density to be able to fit.
Okay, right, you say there's one company interested in Grant County, is it the only company? There's one company that are interested? So
Dalton from
There'll always be somebody else.
Dalton from Apex pretty much told us at the last meeting what Tom's telling us at this point.
Right.
We've got, Gen X is here also.
Yeah. So, as you have a parcel of land, you have a quarter mile in from this side, a mile in from that side, you have a very narrow strip that you can build on. And the space out here in that back is not usable to the farmers. So this gentleman up here talked about the land rights. It's both for the neighboring properties and their protection, as well as allowing the farmers to do what they want on their land. To Tom's point, if we can only build this narrow strip here, say we need 100 acres to build the project. We have a few here, now we can find a few here, and a few here, and we have much more total space in the county. We need to get more participating landowners, which is absolutely fine. It's part of the work that we do, but it becomes very checkerboard. Thank you. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Because you got a county, that most of our roads are square mile, right? So you gotta do a setback a quarter mile in on each side. Then you got a little square in the middle. So they have squares that they need.
Well, that's a thing, there's a dwelling on all four sides. But what we're seeing is we're seeing these solar farms going in and surrounding homeowners 250 feet from their house. And if their land is, you know, say they've got 4 acres and their house is in the middle of it, the whole setback is on their land. They're not giving up an inch. They're 50 feet away. Now, how's that fair? It's not. And these things are 20 feet high, and they're going to be that close. So if you're out near your property line, it's 50 feet. If you're out near your property line and join your yard, it's 50 feet away. If you're 200 feet, if your house is 200 feet from the property line.
Well, part of the ordinance also incorporates screening.
Yeah.
Okay, to minimize that effect.
And I would, in that case, what you're talking about, then I would come back to the planning part of it, and why wasn't it brought up? If we've got a home getting surrounded, why didn't at some point through the process a red flag go?
Yeah, that's true. But the reason we proposed a large setback is because if a person has a large amount of land that their house is sitting on, the property line under this rule becomes right to where they can build to within 50 feet. So, okay, we suggested a large one. We understand. And we also know you suggested a small one. And there are some counties that have larger and smaller. Not exactly sure where you guys want to end up. But you're going to pass it, or change it, or deny it. Making a proposed amendment. You know, and we haven't had a lot of time to work on this. It came to our attention in late October.
Right. So we've had emailed drafts to the 8 various land commissions, which is the ones that have to actually adopt or not adopt to give a recommendation. So a few weeks or back when we met our joint meeting, we'd like to get some more input so that we hopefully get a good round input. So you're back. Okay.
Question, Ryan. If I was gonna go to you in the garage 20 by 30 or whatever, was it 20-foot setback from side property line right now? This, but is it 20 foot typical setback? 25. Okay. Just think about that. 25 feet, you put up a small garage. You guys are looking at 50-foot setback from property line. But they can put this structures that could come from my, it's not like a little solar no-kill spot. I think the main concern is these mega solar farms. But, you know, on 25 feet, they'll build a garage, but they can start something that goes for miles, 50 feet. Okay, last meeting, I brought up property lines. I don't care what the setback, I do care that it needs to be from property. That is a key thing, property lines. Protect. I don't understand, I'm just, you know, when you're developing a solar farm, would it be hard for you if Grant County had a setback from a property line, let's say, I'm going to throw a number out, I'm scared, 500 feet. I'm a farmer, okay? I own the ground, you're wanting to come up next to me. Could you why couldn't you come to me and say, hey, can we negotiate that down? Give me a chance to express my concerns. I might say, yeah, you can put it 50 feet from a farm ground, that's fine. But I don't want it, you know, 50 or 150 feet from my house. You know, negotiate with all the landowners that you're going to be involved in. Been around this before, it's not good. But negotiate with all parties that you're going to be around. Give everybody an opportunity. I like the zoning thing that you guys are working on, should be that separate zone. So we keep the community involved. But really look at property lines. I mean, I just think that's a key. Whether it's 100 feet, 200 feet, make it 300 feet, and let them come back and negotiate the 50-foot minimum. Give them that right. Give those all farmers, all landowners right. It's my ground just as much as it is the neighbors. I agree. We all have property rights. But you're not talking a simple little solar farm. You're totally changing the rural community. And they might work in some areas in Grant County, but they might not work as well in other areas. But all be quiet, property lines, all I can say is property lines. Okay.
Okay, anybody else on setbacks before APC we talk and discuss a little bit more?
Tom, how tall are, we allow up to 20, but I believe they're 12 generally at
Generally 12,
That's a whole tilt?
maybe 15, but we're talking about two panels that are mounted like this on top of a steel pile. They rotate from east to west throughout the day. So they are generally lower than that, right? During the day when they're visible, they're going to be lower than that height because they're going to be collecting the sun's rays. And then at night, they'll reset. And top tip height could be anywhere, typically 12 to 15 feet.
So the 20-foot is just a maximum height for us, but they're generally much smaller.
That's on flat.
We were hearing in one of the other meetings, yeah, they're 20 foot tall. If you review the tape, you will hear somebody say, yeah, they're 20 foot tall.
That's if they're on flat ground. If you're on a rolling farm that's got hills right down State Road 36 where I was at today, there might be ones that are 15, but in clients, there's one up there that's 50 because it's going over the hill.
So, yeah. Anyway, we're proposing screening that's pretty short compared to the height of these panels.
Okay, John.
Hi, my name is David Kane. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I appreciate your comments, sir. I agree with those. I appreciate the BZA taking their stance. I think that's important. I appreciate your comments. I think a buffer zone, and there might be some compromise here. Maybe 1450 is too much, but certainly certainly 50 feet is way, way, way too close. The comment's been made, you're changing the landscape of your rural farmland, and you're taking a lot of farmland out of production. And we can continue to do that and continue to take away our food source. I think we're going to end up regretting that move for the next 30, 40, 50 years. And I don't want the tail wagging the dog here, and he's coming in here and dictating to us what we need to do. We're Grant County. We can make our own decision. You guys can make our own decision. That's why you're on these boards. And we're going to leave it up to you to make those wise decisions. But certainly I think we can control our own destiny here by making some wise decisions that somebody said earlier. It's going to affect generations here. And it's going to affect the generational farm also. So, thoughts to consider.
Okay, I have one more question too.
Okay.
I hope I'm not totally misunderstanding this, but with the setbacks.
Yeah.
Now, my house is here, I got a woods here, and there's a big empty field here. Are they gonna be able to come through my woods up to 50 or 200 feet or whatever to my house?
The woods on your property.
Okay.
It's their property.
Okay.
Right. No, they can't come in
But
here.
that's why I'm saying, that's why I misunderstood, because it said from the house, not the property line.
Well, they gotta stay back from the property line before they start to build. Plus, at least 100 or.
Okay, good enough. I want to make sure I understood.
We got another?
Just a quick question. How many people are we talking for what you're proposing?
It's a good question. Projects, vary in size, but the actual land that would be covered by panels could be anywhere, roughly 300 to 400 acres. The project fence would be more than that, but the panels themselves are spaced out. So you have meadow grasses in between those panels. So the land itself actually covered by panels, we're talking 200 acres. But the whole project, the project fence, that could be, 3 but we're, as I mentioned, there's prairie grasses planted in between those panels themselves. No, we have to abide by setbacks. So, there's going to be road setbacks, there's going to be residential setbacks, there'll be drain tile setbacks into a project, and all of that means that a project is going to be, separate.
In addition to that, it may be a bit of a hustle. It will be it depends on the land the farmer.
You're back. I think it's a good question. And I think we're talking about one project here. Don't forget, these are multiple projects, times 400 acres. All of a sudden, you're looking at 7, 8, 10,000 acres in Grant County of solar farms. Don't be deceived.
One more? Okay.
Yeah, if you don't mind, I just had one more comment. I do just from the perspective of the benefits of a project, I think that through this mentioned the tens of millions of dollars of tax revenue that a project that's a really tax base. There's significant economic benefits to a project of this I also I feel like oftentimes there can be some misconceptions about what a project actually ends up looking like. All energy technology right? But solar is one of the truly most benign. It's quiet. It has meadow grasses in between the panels themselves. Those have really deep root structures, so they're actually helping the local drainage in those areas. And ultimately, the installation we're talking about, steel piles going into the ground. So at the end of the project's lifespan, which we're modeling 30, 35 years, those can be removed from the ground, and that ground is going to be primed and ready to go for agriculture when the project is decommissioned. It will have been for that time. It will have had long, deep root structures with these meadow grasses. It's going to be in a good position for high yields at the end of the project life cycle. So, in terms of a neighbor, I think just remember, we're not talking about where we have truck traffic coming in and out every day. We're talking about a very quiet, fairly low to the ground, 15 feet roughly, existing setbacks. I think we're going to have vegetative buffering screen from the project itself. I just kind of want to give a better sense of what the projects look like in reality. I'm happy to answer any questions. We are a private independent.
You're a for-profit corporation. LLC. What about an inverter? How much noise does an inverter make? Do you see giving it an additional setback beyond the normal setback from
an inverter, we make sure it's in the center. It's not going to be on the edge of the mess here. But the inverter itself, the decibels, it's comes out to like the audible level of a non-station being rustling. It's really just in terms of general, it's really not that much.
I think there are different levels of property, right? I don't think that the level of property.
My name is Denise Turner. I'm a licensed real estate broker 14 years in the state of Indiana, and I am currently a county extension appointee to the Planning Commission in Madison County. I served for 1 year on the BZA in Madison County. I sent all of you some emails today to the BZA, to the Area Planning Commission, and to the county commissioners. I've been involved in solar for 3 years. I was instrumental at the State House last legislative session for House Bill 1381, a member of Hoosiers for Responsible Solar, a member of Hoosiers for Home Rule, and a member of Citizens for Responsible Solar across the U.S. I want you to know tonight there's a couple things that is so important about the solar ordinance. Madison County is also in the process of developing the solar ordinance, and every city are drafting that. Everything I'm saying tonight, I'm going to give you a disclaimer. I'm not an attorney, this is not legal advice. And I also want to say you definitely need to consult attorneys in this situation. The other thing is that everything I'm going to tell you tonight is documented, peer-reviewed studies from professors of universities, from the American Association of Licensed Trade Institute, and peer-reviewed studies, and everything I'm telling you tonight and provide studies and evidence. Number one, I'm going to give you an attorney in Madison County, and I want to come up specifically because of the tax revenue. So let me read you this quote. While it is true that installation new assessed tax revenue, it is not necessarily true that the expected tax receipts will continue or remain the project may be sold in whole or in parts to public utilities. If the project is sold to a government utility, the solar equipment is tax exempt. Second, there are transactions which have to reduce the assessed value and thus tax receipts, including but not limited to sale, lease transactions, sales, perhaps related party or back, or where the fair market value is reset with each sale. And financing transactions that may result in reduced sales, corresponding tax revenue and receipts. All of these transactions are legal and they're not disclosed by the developer's application. They have not made any assurances that this tax is going to be permanent or not significantly reduced over time. One of the things that was discussed by the attorneys in our county is that it's very important for you to have in your ordinance and to negotiate with your county councilman that whatever's permanent stays the same, regardless of them becoming a public utility. And if they become a public utility, Indiana Code 8-1-37-6, it can become a participating electricity supplier because the state of Indiana has given incentives to do this. If they become a public utility, they have eminent domain rights. That's shared by every member in here. So be aware of that. Make sure that the big thing that you have in your ordinance is that that money stays the same regardless of sales, regardless of taxation, regardless of becoming a public utility. Protect your county and make sure you get that money. That's what they're going to promise. And number two, that no eminent domain. I'm very worried about owners signing solar leases. What's going to happen 35 years at the end of this? As far as real estate property values, I've worked across the entire United States with MAI, that's Master Appraisal Institute designated appraisers, and I can tell you right now that this will into property values. The evidences are very clear. Texas University study, Rhode Island University, or Heckman Appraisers of Pennsylvania, Madison County, Indiana, right here, 16.5% decline on the property value. I have 14 other real estate brokers in my county that have provided negative buyer feedback. Homeowners have rate. The difference that you need to understand with the studies that the developer is giving you and the studies that other appraisers are coming around is that those studies are based on small-scale solar, like what's at your high school that is in town with residential uses, whether it's industrial, commercial, residential altogether. They're small. You live in the town. You're used to that noise. You're used to that sound. What's coming in the rural communities is nothing like what they are comparing it to. This is an apples and oranges comparison. This is like comparing a single-wide mobile home in a trailer park to the governor's mansion, in my opinion. This is massive amounts of land that is taken. Homeowners are finding themselves living in industrial power plants that is up to planning commissions and BZAs. Your job is to protect your health, welfare, safety, and property values. That is your number one concern here. It is not about your economic development. That's for your county council economic development to talk. And I know that money sounds good. It does. But you also have to play devil's advocate with someone like me who's been in this battle for 3 years and let me debate this. Because I'm telling you right now, homeowners lost a lot of money during the Great Recession that we had in 2009. We lost a lot of our home values. The single most expensive investment that a homeowner will make is the purchase of a home. And you're not going to tell me that surrounding me in barbed wire and 6-foot chain link fence and 15-foot solar panels is not going to injure property values on all 4 sides of your house. Those aesthetic views have changed. We have a history in real estate that shows property values are huge, impacted, and increased by beachfront, mountain views, golf course views, and when I moved to the country, this is my aesthetic views that I'm going to see. So these are tons and tons of studies. And when you look at the developer studies, I would suggest that you contact this lady here. Over 50 years of experience in her profession is in damage studies. She was just hired by the state of Kentucky. She's licensed in multiple states, including Indiana, and has evaluated the developers' appraisals reports when she was hired by Kentucky to do so. And you will find a major bias. A lot of these companies that are producing the real estate reports actually own a portion of their capital is advancing renewable energy in this nation. So secondly, I want to say something else here about farming, all right? So I'm a farmer's daughter. I grew up in the rural community. I have studied American Farmland Trust. If you haven't read those studies, please do so. We lose 175 acres every hour in this nation. Now, you take, in Madison County, it's 1,890 acres out of agricultural production for 35 years, you will have an impact. a professor from Michigan. His name is Stephen Miller. He is an economic agricultural economist. This is what he does in conjunction with the university, looking at the projections of corn and beans. And energy, same company in Madison County, cost us $26 million. When you take that much ag land out of production over 35 years, we will have an $82 million economic loss, according to this professor in Michigan. Now, I'm telling you, this affects everyone. There's another quote by the attorney that came to Madison County about zoning. I have used this for several things. Zoning ordinances are enacted for the health, safety, and welfare of all residents, protecting property rights in both directions. The right to enjoy your land, but also the right for your neighbor to enjoy his or her land. Ordinances are intended to promote a safe, healthy, viable framework for development. Compatible land uses that work in harmony with each other to promote development of homes, increase the value of community. That is what the goal is here, is to help balance these property rights. And I'm not against the landowner wanting to lease his land, but not at the expense of his neighbor. This is why we have zoning laws. And these reports from these appraisers, they're saying this reminds me of an era when there were no zoning to allow this to happen to the community and the neighbors. Now, he's talking about setbacks and how we're going to have more land. Why do they have to build these things so big? Let me ask you, what's being going on in California, North Carolina? These are the two states in the U.S. with the most solar. The solar farms out there, they're around 40 megawatts and 60 megawatts. They're not this 120 and thousands of acres. They don't take so much of our land. And why is it on our prime farmland? And why are planning commissions ignoring what the American Planning Association had to say? Do you realize that the American Planning Association put out a memo in 2019 to guide planning departments across the United States? It's in the binder of the information that I emailed you. Here's what they said for cross-siting of solar farms. So in areas where they are difficult to detect, the prior use of the land has been marginal, and there's no designated future use specified. An example, not in growth areas, not on prime farmland, not near recreational historic areas. A solar facility located by itself in a rural area close to major transmission lines, not prominently visible from public rights of way or adjacent properties, and not located in those growth areas on prime farmland or near cultural, historic, or recreational areas. This may be an acceptable use with beneficial impact on the community. American Planning Association, Planning Environment, I just want to close and say a couple of things that is just so instrumental about the future of this nation. Okay? The nation this year report, because of global climate change is affecting the productivity of farmland, our yields. And we face a hungry future if we do not protect these activities. For decades, American Farmland Trust and other organizations like Farm Bureau have been active, to stop, and we have a comprehensive plan to stop taking farmland. I told you, we lose 175 acres every hour according to our Farmland Trust. We lost 33 million acres between 1992 and 2012. 11 million was prior. God only made so much real estate. We're not going to get this back. And every county has the right to decide what they want to do. But I'm an advocate for placing this in a properly sited facility, on our brownlands, on buildings, for parks, or for parking lots. Find places to properly send this stuff, and they don't have to build them so massively. They do not have to do it. Find smaller areas where they're circular in shape and put together that 300-acre plots someplace where they don't affect so many homes. And go to those homeowners. This is one of the biggest things you can do is listen to Kevin Morris from Michigan State University, a zoning expert, and he guides planning departments across the Midwest. And he's given tons of guidance on this. And the first thing that you should do is when they always argument is force developers. You've got to communicate with every homeowner that's going to be affected. Offer it out if they want to sell out and move, or buy their land, or do something, but force them to have community development, because that is what happened with the North Star Solar Farm. Currently the largest solar farm in the U.S. It's located in Chicago County, Minnesota. The developer bought all that land, bought all the houses around it. And then when he went to sell those houses back, he lost $600 and some thousand doing so, because why? People didn't want to live next to a solar farm. That's documented in this report as well as stuff that I've given you. I'm telling you, Protect yourself by two things. The biggest thing is put a property value guarantee in your ordinance, because here's the thing. If they say it doesn't hurt property values, and they're so sure, and they have their experts, why would they care if there's a property value guarantee in your ordinance? Protect yourself, because homeowners are going to come out with pitchforks and torches and sue you, because that's where we're going in the rest of these counties. This is an unfair treatment of property value. Read avoiding pitfalls. Citizens Planner Guide, because it is absolutely important that you protect the community. I will answer any questions that I can give to you. I'm going to send you a one last quote from American Farmland Trust, and please listen. By 2050, the demands on agriculture to provide sufficient food, fiber, and energy are expected to be 50 to 70% higher than they are now. Given the limited land area in the United States and the need to feed and house an increasing number of people, it is more important than ever to protect the agricultural land and the natural resources needed for long-term sustainability. American Farmland Trust, farms under threat. I just want you to know that this is an important decision. I'm asking you to table it. Read everything that was emailed to you. Read Madison County's ordinance. It ain't perfect. I'm not super happy with it. But you know what? It's a good start. Compare. Please consider what you're doing here. This will affect your community, this county, for a long time. It certainly will. I could talk 2 more hours on all of this after 3 years of locking myself in my bedroom and reading and educating everything that I possibly can. I will fight for your rights to do what you want to do with your land and not protect others' neighbors. And I will agree with whoever he is. This ordinance does need to get passed pretty quickly. Legislation will be coming back around in the state of Indiana and do away with home rule. But then someone wants to put this up against your house. The bill, House Bill 1381, was nothing but left to remove energy companies. It takes the county's way to decide what we want. You're right, Great County should decide. The majority should rule in a lot of situations. But I mean, you've got to get your ordinance done and protect the people. Because if you don't, the state will come in. And now there's no guarantee for it's the minutes there to protect those in the process of the. This is a huge, huge, huge decision. I wish you the best. It's been grueling in Madison County. The divisions in the neighborhood is unbelievable. And the lawsuits are coming. I promise you that, especially over property values. We're not going to put up with it. I would be happy to answer any questions anybody has. Yeah.
What do you think is a good setback?
Well, Madison County put a 500-foot in there, but I totally agree with from your property line. We pay taxes on all of our property, and it should be at the property line. Personally, I'd like to see it 1,000-foot, but I know they're going to be mad about that. But then again, they don't have to build these stinking projects so monstrous. Why do we have to have 4,000 or 5,000 acres? You guys know the last 5 counties, that's the largest going to be in the heat. I haven't seen the Indy Star and all of that. 15,000 acres of our land. And I've had my solar booth at the Madison County Fair for 3 years. I do as much as I can to educate everybody on both sides of this issue. And I'll tell you another thing. Research who you're going to shake hands and do business with. Get on the Edgar County Watchdog list for Edgar County, Illinois, Edgar County Watchdogs. Look it up and read about energy, about their experts, their professionals. Go to YouTube. Watch the YouTube channels of how in Rhode Island, one of their representatives snuck into the offer and Dr. Max. Look up.
All right, so you'll hear me. Have emails on that. Yeah, I think probably. That came in.
Yeah, I didn't email this growth department, I emailed the county commissioner and the area plan. So I'm just saying, you guys.
We realize, I think we do realize it's a big decision.
Yeah. Protect yourself. That's all I'm saying. Protect yourself. I heard you say, sir, you wanted to eliminate lawsuits. That was your goal.
Well, do it right.
Yeah, do it right. And eliminate legal.
All right, so let's do what if we do some trying to accomplish here. Any other comments on setbacks?
Yeah, I would be remiss, as Tom would say, if I didn't say something about the tax benefit. And the fact of a warehouse, trucks running in there. I mentioned it last time. This is not a development that the community is going to have benefit from, like for instance, a hospital going in. People who live within our community are going to worked there at the hospital professionally for years. It provides like a benefit for people who live in the community. Same thing with Walmart, the distribution center, as well as the stores that we have people there, friends of ours that work there every single day because they have a job. So they support the community. This will not support the community, any kind of tax benefit. I'll be eager to see what the even if all done. We'll be lucky to get any benefit on a per capita here when it's distributed across the county. Godspeed. At least historically, that's what we've seen. If like where there's really no jobs, and is just something that tax.
That's all about the debate. Brought that up. So yes, this is not a job. Yes.
Well, we won't even put it in. We won't even put it in.
It's not going to. It should benefit property taxes. But like Tim was saying, a lot of these search firms that come around looking for places to develop that will bring in maybe employers with people. These are sometimes the things that they're looking for. How renewable friendly is that true? Those are some of them.
That's usually an increasing number of people. The first question is, we want renewable energy. I mean, the large firms, publicly traded firms, have sustainability guidelines. They're looking to them because there's investment funds that will only invest in sustainable funds. So we are seeing an increasing number of companies, and they're the big names, they're the big paying jobs. Williams, General Motors, they're looking to be net neutral. Emission neutral. And same with Walmart. All these firms are moving to that. So this is an important. And with any development, they're going to look how they're treating the public sphere. I mean, Cafe Valley came very close to not being in our community because of the lack of community support. That's 550 jobs right now. There was people opposed Walmart, which was there are over 1,000 employees now. So, I mean, it's.
So our duties is to protect the land and guidelines. Their part is trapped in whatever economic, but we don't. There's some interplay there, but our job is to protect the land across the land. All right. So any other setback talks before we talk about ourselves on what we're thinking? So right now the draft 4 shows it at 250 feet. With some screening issues in there, surrounding property owner. 250 feet is from dwelling to the first structure. Setback on the development property is 50 feet. That would incorporate the screening. So, we'll go around the table and get some feedback again. As do we think 250 spare? Should it go up a little bit? I doubt it. I don't think I should. Myron, got any thoughts? Start around this way.
My thoughts are the same as they always have been, 1,450 feet. I'm talking about protecting the residents, the people, their property, and also, I'm not from the house. And they can offer me $1,000 an acre for 40 years, cash rent, and I would pay that. They're not coming on my property.
Yeah. I thought I was quarter mile, and I like the BZA's recommendation.
I agree with them. 1,450 foot sounds good to me.
Pete?
I would rather have a proposal that worked from the property line than from, but I don't have a set, I'm not informed enough to be able to pick a number of feet.
Okay. Right.
I don't know if the 1450 is too high. but I know 250 is too low. I would, so if we put it at the 1450, and he wanted to talk to that farmer over there, he could agree to say, you can put it at 50 foot if you want, correct?
They can go on negotiation for an agreement that could reduce it. Now, however, that going to be half or could be
whatever they want.
I thought I read somewhere that it could be reduced by half.
It could be reduced, but not, the right of way cannot be.
Okay, the right of way, okay. Okay. So, like I said, these are individual developments, so there would be, you know, there could be a handful of houses that they're gonna have to deal with on an individual basis.
Yeah, farm to farm can be close.
Right, right.
It's just a
There's a resident.
Yeah. I'd go with that 1450.
Rex, I didn't, well, you agreed with what the BZA.
I agree with him, but-
As an individual person, or an individual.
But sometimes I question going from the house to, I really don't know what's right, you know, I don't wanna run them off.
Which
But
that would
I feel for like the homeowners that gotta live by it. Sometimes you don't want stuff by, so why is it? Well, I'm kinda lost.
Well,
What would be right?
I see out here, I know some farmers out here that are second and third farmers that have built on their father or mother's property. Now, those were filled with solar farms from your parents. You wouldn't have had that opportunity, correct? So what are you doing to your kids?
Amen.
We're 1735 family farm. We're close to where we want to live.
See, another thing about this is, that doesn't mean we're gonna run them off.
No.
I mean, maybe there are all kinds of scare tactics they use to get their foot in the door.
All right, I'll give you my opinion. Once again, our Thursday meeting with their plan or Sweetser Town Council, the other topic we talked about setbacks. We did, we were talking about the town, more so than out of the county. So I do maybe a slight increase on 250 up to maybe 300 or something, because we do know they can go back and negotiate to some extent. But, and I think we brought this up at our last meeting here, that the town, Mike, and maybe the representatives of the other towns, is to have a municipal setback. There are a few ordinances out there with a municipal setback. A couple of them are 1 mile, there we go. 2 of them 1 mile, 1 1/4 mile. And also, once again, so let's say the next Sweetser, we do have a transmission line that does run to the east, the south, kind of. So let's say it's just it's like anything else, it can be negotiated. So, okay, now it's going to be coming in, let's say, half-mile light, but where it's at in this, it shouldn't maybe present a problem for the town of Sweetser. Now, they may still have issues with farmers around it, the setbacks with the other things, but it may be all right for the town of Sweetser. And the reason why we brought up this, to protect all the small towns, that they come up right to our borders, per se, even if we do the 1,400 feet, where are we going to grow? Right now, it's kind of stagnant to some extent, but we would like to have that opportunity. So, I would like to add in within this ordinance, municipal buffer, which I would think our town would be very receptive to protect that, you know, encroachment on the town. So that there could be future development, mainly for us, it'd be more residential to that extent. Once again, we can probably put in whatever number we want. If we do too crazy, I'm sure the commissioners will probably adjust it. Send it back down around to us. But if we have valid points, I'm sure they're gonna list it again. Maybe they'll have second thoughts, consideration, because you gotta remember, this draft went up through their final commissioners summit workshop. So these are things that they kind of, through their workshops, the bodies of people that were here kind of, well, this is a good number, which might have been more weighted to the business side than the residential or the citizen side, even though they were public open meetings.
What was Fairmount probably more? If we did what we want, or up to the end.
I'd say at least a mile. I mean, that's what we're surrounded by is property. And you could box us in 3 miles. In one farmer, you could box 2 sides of us in.
If you didn't have that bump. So I would think there would be a need personally to add that line item in there.
If you were just a quarter mile away, you'd have a lot of people unhappy about looking at that. Compared to the view they have now.
Right. So the easiest thing, I guess, within the discussion would be the municipal setback. Would we like to add that to the ordinance? And then do we do it at mile? Or is there
So I believe, I spoke with,
Yeah.
your name?
Trina.
Trina. You said some already have it, but it's not in their solar ordinance, it's in their town ordinances.
So what I've run into before is the town will have extraterritorial jurisdiction, which is a radius around the town, where they're also consulted, have to give approval for anything they do within that radius.
It usually applies, since I'm an ex-planning director, and actually one of the few people here that actually did planning on a paid basis for a great number of years. Usually those, and there's a great, and I work for the city of Bloomington, which had lots of case law around this. You have to bestow that, and you have to bestow it on, they would then have the power, the town would have the power regardless of all activities. You just couldn't limit it to solar. You would have to give the town that ability to do that for everything.
is everything related to
Anytime you're doing a zoning action.
zoning within the town, within that radius?
Yeah, but they would have complete control. It wouldn't be the county commissioners anymore. It would be the town or the jurisdiction. Now, the question you would have really confronted here is that you have non-participating jurisdictions. So what would you do for Swayze? And Matthew still not?
Marion
and Gas City and Jonesboro, Jonesboro is.
Right.
Marion and Gas City are not.
Right, they got their own.
So what would they, you know? So I mean, it becomes a.
But I mean, like, okay, as Gas City, you wouldn't want to box Gas City in for future development.
No, I mean,
you guys have grown twice in the past 20 years.
I would suggest to you when you get into property rights in every one of those cases, it was voluntary annexation and voluntary acquisitions. You know, it's the same thing when we the Weaver Power project, expanding to the north side of Weaver, Van Buren, that was all voluntary. So, you know, it's one thing to sit here and say, and I get where the town's coming from. I mean, we work with the town of Fairmount trying to do subdivision down there. And the thing is finding it's landowner. Every time we had a small manufacturing project, it was located in Fairmount a number of years ago. And when we approached a number of farmers down there, they say, hey, if you find anybody interested in selling, we want to buy.
I know, we're getting ready to lose it back there.
Yeah.
Build solar panels on top of it.
We would really be in favor of businesses building their own solar on rooftops or in their area that they have surrounding their business, like the Walmart distribution center. If they wanted a solar panel farm there at their place, that would provide service for them. We know where that electric's going. It's going to be used there. That also benefits the community. We would find things like that, projects like that, I think, very favorable.
So
Like
it sounds
the
kind of
one in
capricious
Gas
and random in my mind, not being determined, those would be words that would come to my mind. So planning to be very concerned about that. I mean, you have to have a consistent policy, you have to have consistent rules. You can't just say, like, one property owner.
It would be a mere commercial, which we haven't accounted for. It would not be a major solar.
What's the, I mean, I don't, they have enough acreage, they could do a major.
The airport is getting ready to put a solar on top of the maintenance, the largest hangar structure.
They have a substation there too, so it makes more sense to take the power from solar into the substation.
I think this brings up the question of where is the power going?
In the line.
In the grid, so whoever owns that grid, that's who they'll sell to.
Yeah, so the large one is not gonna benefit anyone
There's three
here.
grids in the United States. It makes no difference where the power goes on the grid. If New York needs power, it can go on and all that shenanigans.
This goes to solar, it's like your window. They hook it, and they could be going anywhere.
What about Texas during the ice storm?
Again, but they don't have to cross back into the grid. They got themselves into a deregulated situation where they cause their own disruption.
Windmill.
Right. So we're still talking about setbacks. So now I'm not sure. You're municipal, so we would like to make sure that we work that correctly, that's legal. You're kind of taking that in trouble to do stuff, because we don't have jurisdiction a mile out. But I think it's something we need to try to incorporate in there. So we may have to do some research to get that put in there.
This is just a farmer talking. It makes more sense for you to build a solar panel on the side of town or school to benefit the local people who got more houses together than it does out in the country.
Well, yes, if we living out there has land, they can do that. They got enough available land out there.
I'm saying if I had a farm that bordered against Sweet Street and came to me and said, I'd like to put a solar, we're going to power for school, houses, I would be more open to that than just knowing what's going on in the grid. And I assume a lot of farmers would.
That's benefiting the community, that's benefiting their company that is making money, right? Whereas a school is a non-for-profit that relies on farmers. I mean, I don't know which farmer it is, but somebody donated land to our ag program for Madison Grant, I believe. You might know.
I'm sorry.
Who donated land to Madison Grant Ag this year?
Well, they already own their own track.
Yeah.
High school. That's not what you're referring to.
Yeah.
Madison Grant already owns that land. I know. Tom Barrett donating that all back to that they.
Yeah. I mean, that's your community giving back, whereas you put 1,000 acres and take that off, you're not giving that to anybody. Really not.
So we're getting back to setbacks. Trying to nail the ones that were, the setbacks.
I just have a question of how you run this meeting, because I'm kind of lost. Because I was lost on the last thing that you were talking
We're
about.
talking about the process improvement.
Yeah, there was conversation, but was there an actual counted vote? Do you not take an counted vote, or you just do a conversation?
We're trying to get it to the public hearing.
Right.
Where we would take an actual vote.
Okay,
Right.
thank you.
So that-
Right, this is just trying to build consensus,
Okay, I'm
and
just
by
trying to
nods and the way
understand.
we were talking, it looked like they wanted to go that route. So that's what we'll develop into. Then when we have hopefully our whole board here, where we may have other people that may outnumber the other one, or they may agree with the way it is, to make that recommendation up the chain of
Tonight,
command.
you're just saying tonight is just.
Try to get the draft,
Okay. But
These-
you're
these
not-
are These are the loose ends.
loose ends to
I
get
just
the,
didn't-
to
I
get,
just wanted to know if this is voting
No.
or just a conversation.
this is just to get the draft ordinance into a final ordinance so it can be published and have a public hearing.
Right.
So we're in consensus to develop some way to put a municipal setback. So we need to make sure it's legally done. And however that incorporates. So we may need to do some research on that.
We also have consensus on the 1450.
And then we need to go back, it seemed like everybody liked the 1450, but to me, that does seem outrageous to me.
It
That
does
seems
to me-
outrageous.
It does to me a little bit, that's why that 250, I'm like some people, M20.
But that puts the legwork on these guys to go to the house, the homeowners, property owners. I mean, you might get around that solar farm to agree that, heck, you could put it 250 feet from my property line. This is a setback that was put in place by the county, though, to protect the property owners that, don't want to speak.
Right now, the ordinance doesn't have anything to protect any of those people. If you could read, I did take the time to read through it, and Chuck, there's nothing in there to protect us. I mean, the only thing that I've seen that they, is the setback. I think it needs to be expanded further, beyond just setbacks. It needs to really take into account property values, and even things like you're talking with the barriers. I think there needs to be closer coordination with the people that it's going to impact. And it should be put in writing. If you don't put it in writing, then there is no leverage by any of the property owners when it comes time for this thing to go in. They will just bulldoze through. I mean, and I've been impacted by setbacks in the past, so I'm not just pulling this out of the air. When there is a setback, there is a setback. And once you go and you try to do something about it, you can be directly impacted even from a health perspective. And it is very difficult to do anything about it once it's in writing. So you need to document it. You really need to expand what you're doing. And if the property owner says it's okay to do, then that gives, like you said, it puts some illness or a little bit more ownership on them to try to do the due diligence, as opposed to just looking at a plat map and, calling up and looking at things from a satellite view and figuring out where I want to put this thing. I mean, is that right now, based on what I see here, that's about all they have to do. Look at it from a satellite map, measure out 250 feet, figure out where the biggest chunk is, and go try to influence the people around the property.
How did the BZA come up with 1450?
I don't know, Ed, was that just,
Well, I looked at Adams County and it said 1320. And then it's a point later in time, before a BZA meeting, I typed it up and I typed it wrong. I typed 1450.
okay. But the gist is to be.
Somehow I've been thinking otherwise.
Yeah.
We've been talking about
Right.
some other things, and I must say, I thought 1320.
Yeah.
Because I saw that Adams County.
Right.
And I thought they were doing a good job with what they had in their ordinance. They also had that and property value
So you'd be
guarantee.
okay with a quarter mile being the 1320?
Makes sense. But I typed up 1450.
Okay.
It was unanimously approved. I didn't vote. It was unanimously approved. So
the quarter mile, keeping it in quarters or whatever.
I'm just telling you honestly the way it is.
That's fine.
From the property line.
No,
I wanted to make it a bigger distance because it was from the dwelling. So if somebody has property of, 250 feet or 400 feet beyond their house, and they like to enjoy that property, if they have, they're outside, they're using it, they enjoy the country, if they're out by the property line, I don't want the solar farm coming right up to it. So at 250, if you've got 250 feet from your house, the property line, they're 50 feet on it, and you're just
from the house.
out enjoying your property. It's just like, it's right there. It's big, it's tall, and it goes, And if they're allowed to go 3 sides around you, they may do it. And that house is really going to be devalued. And you could put property owners in a position where if they just built a new house and they've got a big mortgage on it, they're stuck. They can't sell it for what they owe. And some banks would look at that as a negative if somebody was trying to buy it, as to how much they would loan. So there's just a lot to consider.
Well, that's one reason we want to protect the homeowners, because more and more are putting it on their roof anyway,
Yeah.
And that's going to be improved. And these large solar panels that we're talking about here are going to be like the previous satellite dishes in time. I mean, it's going to be improved greatly.
And there's other things to consider that we haven't even talked about, like prime farm ground. How much of that do we want to give up? We might want to restrict a project to 20% prime farm ground. We could have a map of Grant County that shows what our prime farm ground is and how much of that do we want to give up. That's going to become more important over the years.
Yeah, right.
Not less. And we've got ground that is not prime, that might be better for smaller farms. And there is no long-term study on health effects of living around a large solar farm. There are none.
All right, so those are the things I'll discuss in development and public hearings. We're trying to get the setbacks.
Got it.
The mile or municipal, we'd like to add and make sure we try to figure out, as Mr. Eckerly was saying, how we have to incorporate. Homeowners, are we looking at do we want to do 1320? Keep it at a quarter mile? Do we want to go less? It is a negotiable thing. You can always come down, and they're probably not going to want to go up. But to me, that seems a quarter mile.
What people like your town, your town, we should be.
Well, we were looking more at around the town. We weren't doing out in the county home.
No, but I mean, if you're looking around, because farm ground on yours,
Yeah.
how far would you want to set?
For me personally, I think I'd want it a little more than 250.
Yeah.
But I also know, hopefully, or through there should be screening.
Yeah. I probably voted what the BZA said, but then I look at it and I've been thinking about it. I don't know what's the right amount of feet to be back, but like I said, we need to take the homeowner. And if it ain't the dwelling, I think then we should maybe go for the property line. Because when we was looking at windmills years ago, that kind of got me when you said you could be so close, that's fair to the homeowner.
All right, we're making this ordinance that will once again be picked up the line, and our commissioners will review this, and they'll make if it goes too crazy, they may adjust it. If they feel we got some good thought behind it, then maybe they will consider it.
Can I make a quick comment?
Sure.
Okay, 1,320 feet or 1,450, it doesn't make a whole lot of difference. 1,320 is a quarter of a mile. You pass that, you put that in an ordinance, you made a comment. They can negotiate. So
My God, protect it. It's a simple thing. Protect the homeowner. And if they want to negotiate, negotiate.
Which would.
Simple.
That would help hopefully protect their value or offset the value. Okay. So 1320? 1320? So we're kind of leaning toward a mile. Like I said, this will be what's in the public hearing or the ordinance for public hearing. It'll be passed again with a recommendation up to the commission. All right, so these other ones should be a little bit easier to, well, now this is the decommissioning. BZA had some things we do have within the ordinance. So after the useful life of the facility, it needs to be removed to return to farmland, basically. So we do have some language in there. What the draft basically tells us that it needs to be basically brought back to farmland. Correct?
Where we've got salvage.
So there was a minor change. They just want to make sure that when it is decommissioned, that is much.
Hey,
this is a meeting. Still a meeting. Yeah, we're still in a meeting. We still would like to comprehend or be able to hear. So decommissioning is removal. And I think you guys just wanted stronger language that shows that recycle as much as possible, not the pitching.
Yeah.
Hopefully in 30 years, it'll be it probably would be the we'd like to have that spelled out in the ordinance a little better. I don't have a problem with that.
The cheapest way, I'll tell you right now.
Right now, it's very.
Take it there and dump it, just.
Right.
Pile in like a trash.
Right. That is the cheapest way currently, but maybe in 30 years.
Yeah.
So we would like to have that in there to encourage recycling. So that was about the only thing within the decommissioning. Correct?
Decommissioning goes down 4 feet, right?
Well, you gotta pull whatever is in the, holding the post in.
They're talking about drilling the poles deeper.
Well, I think you pull them all the way out. I think you're not gonna dig down, cut it off, and fill the hole back in. And leave it 2 feet in the ground. That's what I'm saying. Right. Dig them back out.
Where did the drainage go when you're done?
Not just one thing, it's like.
There's a 48.
Yeah, it's not completely removed.
All right, we're losing control here, so. They're having a fight.
We need to hear.
He's saying, where are they?
That typically go outside, there's a lot of conversations going on right now.
All right. So we're talking about, so our ordinance is more, reword strongly for recycle, panel, whatever, around the landfill. That's what we like to see. Well, right now, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, at the current stage, these projects last 35 years. So, the recycling
panels last 35 years.
They're warranted out.
That's what I've asked you, everything was covered. I've heard you get on training in situations, so you just can't get it.
I know it's all changing, all evolving. You know, I'm going back to
a depth.
I heard the same things from one department, it's all evolving, every cycle, every daggone blade is on the landfill. Nobody's been able to develop a system to recycle. I come from the recycling industry.
Well, and if he says.
I know this, and also on
It's
your
a
back,
guys posted.
I know there's been some development on that. I don't know anything, I do that. Or are you?
All right, all right, so our position in the ordinance is to recycle. However they're gonna make it happen is what they're gonna do. And currently, if you want, I don't know if you want to speak to what's currently being done, which probably isn't a whole lot, because we've not reached the recycling of some of the things, right?
I mean, the recycling industry for solar right now is being built out. It's gonna have to be when we're looking at solutions going in. But, module warranties, panel warranties, we're talking about 30 years. So we're talking about recycling industry that's gonna continue to grow. And we're talking about modules that are comprised of glass, aluminum, and silicon. So silicon, same. You know, it's a pretty straightforward, non-toxic.
How many recycling industries are there here in the U.S.? That recycle those panels? How many industries that recycle those panels?
I'm not sure off the top of my head.
You don't know one?
I think it's one in the US right now.
That's what he should have known.
But what he's saying is.
It's gonna grow.
It's gonna grow.
Yeah, it's gonna grow.
Chases, that opportunity will chase demand.
These will be sold 3 or 4 times before we ever get to the 30-year.
Guaranteed.
So you gotta end up with some kind of security at the end.
Right.
Well, I think that's what we're talking about.
Right, at the end of decommissioning, they gotta follow certain practices.
Like I say, selling to somebody else, you got.
Follows the project, follows the property, everything will work, right?
There's a real need that these be recycled. Harvard Business Review listed cadmium, lead, heavy metals, ethylene, vinyl acetate, gallium arsenide, cadmium telluride. All these things are possibly in these solar panels. Maybe not in every one, maybe they use different things, but it's talking about these as something you don't want to have leaching out.
Right. So that's why we're.
What about the toxicity of it?
Yeah, these are, some of these listed here are considered hazardous materials.
Yeah,
Right, there's 2 technologies. There's silicon, and then there's cadmium telluride panels. We'd be using silicon panels, so we're not using a cadmium telluride panel. And they're, you know, the soldering on any type of electronic, there could be trace amounts of something, but we're talking about the soldering, and we're talking about the panel being comprised of aluminum, glass, and silicon.
And what do they spray on the outside so the water beats up and runs off?
There is an anti-reflective coating. It's like a windshield type glass.
Yeah. I understand that you can leach off and be a problem. There's more study that we need to do on this, because there are some people saying that you'll never farm that land again.
Yeah.
If you put a solar field on, a solar farm on it.
Yeah, it can be toxic.
Now, they may be a little bit on the alarmist side, but not all of them are. Some of them are university professors, agronomists. We need to do a little more research.
A little more comment?
I have a question on the recycling.
Okay.
Okay, so you have to have power lines to come to all these solar fields, right?
We gotta be able to hook on somehow.
So at the end of 35 years, what are we gonna do with all these power lines that are not being used anymore? Do you recycle those?
So it's not going to be above ground power lines.
It's all below, all of it, 100%.
As project substation will be connecting above ground to the existing grid. That's the above ground component connected.
And where does that power come from?
That power comes from the project moving on to the grid.
So you have a high tensile power line that's running out in the field, they'll break that, bring that down into the substation? and then that's where their power would feed into the
Okay,
substation.
so you have these
They would
huge
have to
power
build-
lines
They would have to build a substation.
in the middle of the field.
But those are already existing today.
But or there has to be one. that's-
They're existing today.
Yeah.
So you would build
The
that.
current transmission lines would run the power.
So you don't have to add any power lines.
No.
Their goal would be to build close to them so they don't have to.
They'll
get
build
into
close.
We try to find existing infrastructure so that we don't have to build large, high voltage above ground.
All right.
That's why you're looking in the rural areas, because a lot of your substations are in the rural areas versus like in town. I mean, in towns have them, but you'll find more substations.
Okay, thank you. I just didn't know.
Sure, no problem.
Okay, so I think we're agreeable to just change the wording on decommissioning to encourage the recycling. Everybody seems to agree on that?
Yes. But Chuck, on that, it does say on page 15, 48 inches beneath the surface. Can we remove that and the whole structure?
Remove the whole pole?
Yes, the whole structure needs to be out.
Do you normally just pile drive the thing in, or you just yank them back out?
Well, that's for that company. It could,
Yeah.
I mean, it could be sold to another company and they get, or he might not be the only one that's interested right now or in 10 years.
Somebody put this 48 inches down for a reason.
I'd much rather see the whole structure out than.
Substructure removed?
Yeah.
Even in construction, foundations are basically what you say.
Yeah.
Okay, so we should
This,
word
this
that.
would be something different, opposite building construction.
But if, I mean, if he's saying they pile drive all their posts in, they're gonna more than likely just pull them right back in.
But let's say the developer comes in and sets them in concrete. That'll have to come out too. So
So if we demolish a house, they only have to take it down past frost depth.
Yeah.
30 inches for a house, so that leaves the foundation all around.
But you got a big connected structure where you got a post every what? 12 feet?
A little more than that, but yeah.
So you don't have nothing preventing it from just coming up over time either.
I'm just saying, just
Yeah.
your building standards would be 30 inches or below
So we're
frost.
going 48, which would be, you'd have to plow down quite a far before you get something below 48.
Yeah, but I mean,
Yeah, it ought to come out, is what you're saying.
it ought to come out. You should
Totally
just leave it
remove it.
there.
Have it totally removed? What you're suggesting?
I mean, if they're drove in, they can pull up right up just as easy.
Right.
But the other.
No, go ahead.
I was just gonna say the clarification there is, we talked about underground cable connected to an inverter. So when a project's decommissioned, obviously everything is de-energized. The poles are pretty easy to remove out.
So you're talking about.
But a lot of times, a farmer is not gonna wanna have, if it's going back into farm ground, they're not gonna wanna have something ripped out across the field on that underground cable. A lot of times, you just de-energize it and you leave it below tillable depth, which is hence the 48 inches.
So you would install all these connected lines below that connects to different panels until it gets to the substation.
To the inverters to the substation.
Okay, so that's more of the reason that the connecting lines that are underground would be installed lower than that, so they wouldn't have to be removed. Which then if it's the farmer name, when you go back the wall up through, they don't like that. I'm not a farmer.
Upsets
You
the
don't like
topsoil.
that?
So about 48 inches, you put that 48 inches,
It's 48 inches in this proposed draft.
because in substations, we put copper for ground mat, and you get 24. And you put
What about the
48
times?
48 is a good number?
48 for the underground cable. Yeah, that's, I mean, my understanding of National Electric Code for the projects, we have to be down around that depth.
Okay, so we're mainly looking at, so that's why that number's there, for that. Okay, so we're learning a little bit more. All right, so that's good, so then I guess we should leave that back. Because otherwise it disturbs the land too much to pull that stuff out.
Once you make a provision in there, if it's not 48 inches, if it's less than 48 inches, it has to come out of the ground.
That's what it says.
Right, that's what it says.
It says remove all physical material.
Right.
If you're gonna pad and ditch the field, 48 inches would be if you pattern ditch, if you're about the wire and the trencher.
Well, you're gonna,
What will the
measure
depth of the
trench
cable
out.
be?
48 plus, I think is what
The
they're saying.
cables will be at 48 inches?
48.
That, yeah, if this, yeah, exactly, that's what we plan on, 48 inches.
How deep are drain tiles?
About 48 to 50.
All right.
It's gonna be a conflict there?
If you ever want to tile the field again.
So, okay, real quick question. If you're 48 inches, you return it to farmland, and the next farmer goes in and says, I gotta tile this land. And he runs into all that wiring, what happens? Then you got that, you got a mess.
You got that.
What about existing tile that's already in that ground, the farmers, it affects?
That is already addressed, because it has to go before the drainage board, and if they can, make it simple here, they hopefully know where the ones that are plotted, so they can deal with that when they're developing their plan. But as they install their project one, then they gotta deal with reconnecting it or rerouting it.
But when they're knifing, they don't know when they're hitting something. Am I wrong on that? If you're knifing in it, you don't know when you're catching a tile. Well, but did they know these hitting something? Can you tell? That's what I'm saying.
So, and I think that came up, that it may be a dry summer too, then lo and behold, we have major rain, and they see there was an issue, then it's their responsibility to go back and fix it. So even though it may got installed, they did something, and there was no immediate notice to it, or knowledge, and then the heavy rains a few years later, they still are running the project. I believe that was talked about.
Are you
The
glad
project
you
is
got,
accountable
you got
for
a different?
contractors.
Okay. Number 4, within their things, with the development and application review process, BZA kind of recommended that, I don't know if this is in our preview, but is to make sure that any of the panels or equipment or product that's going to be used on there is basically, we'll have the word that non-slave labor of some sort. We know a lot of these panels are made, there are American-made products. But a lot of this comes out of China and some of the human rights issues in China. Where these panels are made or believed to be made, we would not like to see that supporting those situations. So, can we get that added in, is basically, or is that something we would like to see added in? Guarantee that the panels were produced using non-slave labor.
Well, if they're made in America, they won't be slave labor. And if they're made in China, they will be.
Where are your panels made at?
Where's your supplier? How do you, at least your company or the other lady there, I'm sure you've been out, meet so many panels, bid or something for it, I don't know. What's your experience? Where are you getting your panels from?
Yeah, we don't have, for our project, we don't have them selected yet, but we do have corporate commitment, and it actually aligns with the EU standards, that we will not use slave labor. There are organizations that track the manufacturing and the supply chain for a lot of the products, and we will do that. But yeah, we're fully in support of your position on this one.
So putting that language in should not present a problem?
Yeah, personally, I welcome this, and as a company,
And then there are ways for us to see that approved or whatever?
yeah,
Okay.
as much as possible, we want to verify as well.
Okay, yeah. All right, any discussion on that? Any discussion? Feel good putting that language in there?
I would just say, I have struggling to read exactly, it says equipment manufacturer and location of the producing plant. To me,
That might be hard to do.
We're talking about pretty you know, if we're talking about a full supply chain for a certain product, I think we could go on for years trying to track down certain components and where they're made. It just, I don't know if that's necessarily feasible.
Well, there are companies that are doing that, very same thing. Philip Morris has just come out saying they're gonna eliminate child labor if they can. They've already, I mean, slave labor is well beyond that. And a lot of supply chains are working towards trying to eliminate slave labor. This is something that's, you know, it's important.
So I don't know, so it's kind of asking it the same thing, want traceability of where it came from, or on the G as a statement guaranteeing panels are produced with non-related. So they're both basically saying the same thing. The one is we're asking more detail, but
You'll have a difficult time verifying.
I would think either way, probably.
Well,
I think you need both.
I think you need to put something in there to document, and then have them produce documents to that effect.
But if she said it was no problem, and he's saying it might be a problem.
Well, I think it's
I think to Tom's point, being able to trace each component back to the level,
Wasn't that just for the panels?
but I don't think there's any problem, you know, saying that we agree with your intention, if we take those steps away.
And we agree there too. I mean, we're, with all of our module suppliers, we're proactively looking at contracts where we're making this clear. We don't want child labor and slave labor. I think it's pretty clear. I'm just thinking of logistically how to, in a permit application, the location of producing plant, I think maybe of the module itself, to me that seems a little unclear if we're talking about like every single small component and the location of the producing plant that produced that small component and the location of that, like I just, some sort of little more specificity around location there would be appreciated.
All right. So I think adding statement D definitely would, the largest component of the solar field is the panels, I would say. So if we can get that here, that in there. I get your point, if you're talking about a motor and wires and all the little components that make it and trace back each thing, that does seem to be a little, in my opinion.
If they're approved suppliers,
But
it shouldn't be that difficult.
No, it's not difficult.
I suppose the question is, what level of detail do you want when we file an application?
So if they're certified, I don't know, do they have certified suppliers that guarantee that they don't do that stuff? The suppliers we use guarantee or say that we don't condone or use these?
I think it's that country of origin. It's like General Motors says, they produce their cars in Mexico. They'll tell you.
Yeah, but it could be made in China and made legal or not with slave labor.
Well,
You know,
I had to bring things in from overseas, and I had to have the proper documentation to support it, or I couldn't get it.
Well, that's not to say that China didn't import it from another country and just put their name on it. But
Like North Korea.
yeah.
That's North Korea's big trading partner. You can buy things that say made in China.
all right. So where are we gonna go with this, guys? APC, where are we gonna go with this? I can see D being a good statement.
I would just say I mean, as long as your major components, I mean, you're not gonna be able to regulate everything. And it goes back to cars. I mean, most cars are made, if they're made in America, they're still made with foreign parts.
Yeah, but there's not that many parts compared to a car. I mean, so the bulk of them, I mean, they'll be easily trace where they were built.
It kind of shows how much due diligence they've done if they know where it's made. If they don't know where it's made, but they're saying, oh yeah, it's not slave labor, that's not a whole lot of confidence building. If they actually check their supply chain and where it's made, that shows they've done some.
So are we talking every component within the solar field?
Well,
or just mainly the panels?
How many?
What's that?
How many components are there?
Well, are you talking about, I don't know, the inverters and things like that?
There's not that many. The thing of it is, there's not gonna be anybody here to check it out anyway.
Right.
It just needs to be in writing.
Yeah, we want it documented, especially if we find out otherwise later.
So what's our consensus?
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Not only do we have to have an ordinance, but we have to have
Be able to
manpower
enforce
to do
it.
all.
Right.
Everything you guys are throwing in here.
Is extra legwork.
Aaron's already left, you made him mad. Our building inspector.
All right.
I no sleep tonight.
So we need to craft something with, D we like, C we need to modify some, to as much traceability as possible on other major components.
So you got your panel, inverter, and battery pack, right? Or what else?
I do a battery.
I would say the panels, the inverters, cabling, access roads, fencing, operations and maintenance building, substation. Those are the main components. But if you're looking at power producing, you know, it's the panels, it's the inverters generating that.
Is that only gonna be on commercial, or is that only gonna be
That's good.
residential also?
Yeah,
Is
so we're
gonna
putting
be-
that in there.
Are we gonna add that for other electric? So you're doing your service panel, are we doing that for that too? Sites, I mean, how far
That
do we
is true,
take it?
so to be consistent through all things, if we're talking, yeah. Well, this is for this project.
If they're putting them on the house,
Yeah.
I think we should just exclude them.
Well, you do that.
But Can we do that?
Can we do that? That's true for one project that we're putting out.
I mean, what can they do about it?
Yeah, it's another company, but they ought to know who they're buying off of.
Yeah. I'm gonna go to sleep here in a little
All
bit.
right. We got one more. Well, this is kind of the last one, but I do have one or two other little comments. So D is good. Add on C there is kind of, was C added on altogether, just the red was there?
Just the red part of that.
So generally with the development, they're gonna tell us what they're putting in.
Right.
It's more of how, that's what they're at, how detailed.
How detailed do you want? Solar panels would be my thing. That's the largest component, and that's, I think we need to go further than that, Eve? One of the solar panels, or just leave it at the solar panel?
I would leave it at solar panel. I just don't know how you're gonna enforce it
Okay.
to that small of a level.
You can't enforce anything.
Right, so solar panels, Jerry, just the solar panel? All right. Pick up D and drop 3 there. All right. Fees, which is not up here, I think that's something they kind of agreed on in the workshops.
Chuck, there was another one on that page
There was another green spot,
that we,
a red spot.
yeah. It's the developer shall offer a property value guarantee acceptable to the county that will make solar array neighbors whole financially in the event that proximity to a utility scale solar development is harmful to residents.
On the setbacks.
This shall be made available to all property owners within 1 mile of project boundary.
All right, personally have problems with that, because anytime we make an adjustment, how's that gonna affect whenever we do something else that may affect property value?
Depends on if it's written in the ordinance.
So, and I think if we go out to 1420, and they have to come back to the homeowner and negotiate, hey, we'd like to be closer, this is where they can get their compensation. Follow the logic there?
No. You're gonna devalue property that's next to these huge solar farms. And now some studies say it doesn't, so then if that were true, which I don't believe, but if that were true, there'd be no reason at all not to put this in there, guaranteeing the value. And if it's not true, this protects the residents from having their house devalued.
Yeah,
I did hear from that lady that was a realtor, and she claimed 16.8% in Madison County was the average devaluation.
Which is interesting because there's no solar, developed solar farms in Madison County.
She said Madison, Indiana,
Yeah.
not Madison County.
Yeah, Madison County's still in a lawsuit.
She also talked about one of the things that we had talked about as far as the road. So they sent out 400 surveys and only 37 came back. And its own study said it was skewed because of a handful of extreme negative. That was one of their studies that she was citing.
In the study you provided, when we actually, page
It
6 and
was
7, it said the bigger the solar farm, the bigger the impact.
Right.
So,
Ronnie, would it impact you if you were gonna buy a place to retire at in the country?
No, I'm just-
Would you want to go?
I understand what you're saying, but
Solar
let's remember fear versus fact. I mean,
That's
there's
fact.
a lot of might,
That's
coulds,
fact.
maybes that we're talking about tonight.
I
That's what we would do it in
The data's
impacts.
hard to come by because it's.
Well, that's where we would look at impact studies that we could put in to look at what impact on a location by location basis to see what the real economic impact would be. We're putting a big blanket over everything with maybes, coulds, but again, these are going to fall back to individual projects, individual locations, and that's what we got to remember.
these really are facts.
All right.
For every one of those studies, you could find another study that says exactly opposite.
I know.
You've been researching.
If
just like
you're
this.
saying there's no impact, there's no reason not to put it in.
You don't
If there
know
is
until
an
that
impact,
project comes in.
There's a reason to put it in to protect the homeowner. Either way, it needs to be in there.
Yeah, I agree. I think it needs to be in there. What do you guys do? Yeah. It certainly is not going to eliminate that.
Well, it just,
I agree with he's been there. I got a customer, city customer out of Stark County, where they just put the one that's the Israeli based company up there. He's bought 160 acres. He's in a U shape. It's all the way around him. Built a new pole barn house and everything. He could sell that if he wanted to. It's all brand new.
Where is this located at? I'm sorry.
Stark County. Stark in Indiana, Stark County. It's where the Great Bay won the whole team.
We're shooting.
About 4,000.
have you actually tried to sell it? I mean,
He just built it. He built out to the country to be out in the country, farms, and he's got a brand new place that's around.
Middle ground, why can't you property values guarantee, but if a landowner wants to sign off on it, he's okay with it come closer, he signs off on it, he releases his right to his property value.
well, that's why I think, at least in my opinion,
Take it both ways.
making that setback greater, quarter mile, that's a fairly that would give a lot more protection to the value of the home.
But you still give, and that,
Well, then
that
that's
property owner wants to, says, I don't care. You're
Right, well, that would be negotiated.
Right. If you got the other property owner that says, no, I want it that far, I want my property value guaranteed. It's both ways, I mean, find the middle, find the middle.
He's right, you have to put it in there just to cover a person, maybe a person don't care. But you got a lot of people who don't care.
Yeah, just logistically, how this would actually.
Yeah, I don't know how you make a fair determination of what the value was and what it's going to be.
And then I guess my other point would just be, we had a huge housing crash in 2008. There could be something of an equivalent in the future. How do you draw a direct correlation when there's larger external? I just struggle to see
They approve that property every year.
That's what we have attorneys for. That's the reason they get paid
Do
big
local
bucks.
comps at the time of sale. We didn't sell it, and do local comps and take the hit.
So I guess long-term scenario, let's say you get your solar farm, they keep growing, all of a sudden, you're paying $700 to $1,000 to implement. All of a sudden, beans are $200 a bushel because we can't keep up with supply and demand, so then what happens? Are you gonna pay more money to that solar panel farm? Is that ground worth more to you?
One of the problems you got is that out of state or people that's inherited ground that look like good cash rent.
It's green. All this is
And they're
green.
taking it away from a young farmer or somebody who's on a farm. But most of those people don't live in Grant County. They've inherited the ground.
See, that's one thing people don't understand about China. China is buying all their supplies for the year ahead. And they're gonna have to, in America, right now, we don't know if we can afford to plant corn because of the increased price in fertilizer. And then we're losing farmland. I mean, stop thinking, it's like that lady spoke about.
Well,
We're buying a green back.
Yeah, good.
So where are we at? So we're back to this. I don't know enough about the law, but if this is within this ordinance, is it contained within this ordinance? I don't know. I mean, if we start making exceptions that, okay, this development's like in the BZA, you're weighing the cost, and sometimes there is a negative, but there's greater good that might affect the property value.
But we
Then
don't.
are you gonna say, okay, well, you need to compensate them? We're gonna do that going forward on all of the different things that we make exceptions for, or?
Well, you know, that's a different case by case situation. But we evaluate based on people that show up and say they are harmed. And then the board has to make a decision. Now here, other counties do have that in their ordinance.
I saw a few, not many, a few.
It's a check the box situation on that on the file that
Right,
Ryan sent
right,
out.
yep.
Property value guarantee, I didn't make it up.
Nope, I saw it.
And it's to protect our residents. And if the effect is small, then wonderful. But if it's not, then they're harmed. Great. If we care about our residents, that's important.
Yeah, I think I agree. It needs to be added in there, Jeff.
I've got a note to ask, to have Kyle look to see, make sure that it is legal. Just a note I made.
Okay, also in there says within a 1 mile radius, all property owners within a 1 mile radius of the project boundary. Is that too far?
That's a matter of opinion. I live a mile and a half from Fairmount. I don't have a bit of trouble seeing Fairmount from my house. And they can see my house from Fairmount. So, I mean, yeah, you can see over a mile. And as further you go out, the amount of loss will be less.
So,
The person that's a
so let's
half mile
say
away is going to be less than the person
I just don't know
that's
how,
closer,
I don't know
right?
how you're gonna do that. So let's say we build one a half mile outside of Sweetser, and there's a house in downtown Sweetser. Oh, I think this house is worth $100,000, they only get $95,000 for it. Oh, it's because of that farm out there that I can't even see from my property line that costed me $5,000 to pay up. How are we gonna even work it?
You can have it appraised prior to the solar farm being built. You can have it appraised after the solar farm is being built. And if there's no impact, then it's not much of a problem, is it? But if you're directly in view of that solar farm and that's messing up that property owner's view, and you're limiting who would want to buy that place based on, the view is not much, the view of a solar farm compared to countryside. It's a big difference.
Concern there would be that most of our appraisers aren't really sure how to appraise solar farms at this point. I mean, that's almost every study we read.
Well, a realtor may get a good idea too. I mean, she was a realtor and she's also been studying it. And she was a BZA member as well. I forget what she said, other positions she had in accounting, but she had another position now as well.
I'm just saying a lot of the studies that we're reading, most of your footnotes is that most of your appraisers still don't yet know fully how to appraise value check.
When you put them on the market, you get a pretty good idea of what'll sell and what won't. That's where the realtor comes in.
I mean, right now in Grant County, Rhonda Wiley says, it doesn't matter what you put in, house prices are so high. So.
Put it right next to a solar farm, it might not be so high.
That's what she's saying, even the properties around our current solar farms, prices are out.
They're not monsters, they're monstrous farms
I
like they're
understand
proposing.
that. I'm just saying,
Big difference in size.
like Chuck is saying, how do you, with our market right now, how do you get a true determination with our market being up so much? How do you get a true determination? And then if it rebounds like normal, does that double? If you do have a decrease, does that end up doubling the decrease?
The market value will show you what it is. Before and after.
You're talking right now too, you gotta look at what's it gonna be like 10 years, 15 years, might be.
So I'm not, again,
I see what you're
telling you what the assessor's saying.
I think it's,
Because if I buy a house today and say it's worth, the real estate's worth 90,000, I can guess, I'd probably get 100,000 out of it, because people are overpaying right now just to buy a house. But I know a guy in Gas City that had his market at fair value, I feel like it was fair value, but he knows the house went up. He decided he'd go north, down to Carolina, because I don't have a mortgage. He upped because he knows people are paying it. But it, to my opinion, it was over fair value, but if you look at what else was selling around him, you know, so I'm like, kind of like, Ryan, how are you going to get a fair value? Because if I take it today, houses are selling a lot higher, and in 2 years, the house is going to be back where they normally was.
Well, what's normal? Real estate's tended to go up over the years.
Yeah. Should.
Should.
I mean, if you bought a house in the 70s, you probably paid $20,000 for it, where it's $120,000 now. But you would never know over
until you go to
50
sell.
years. Yeah.
We got a contestant here.
So I think if the young lady was still here that spoke quite well about the issues with solar farms, she'd be able to answer our questions very, very easily. But my suggestion would be it's like my house. My house is absolutely worth nothing right now until I sell it.
then it's valued. You know, if I sell it next year, it's at next year's value. If I wait and sell it 20 years from now, it's at that value. And so if my house is sitting next to a solar farm, I think what you have to look at is, if I sell that house 5 years from now and I'm next to a solar farm, you take that like house within Grant County, you find a like house and have some comps run on that and say, okay, a house that's 10 miles away, a like house is worth $300,000, but my house that sits next to a solar farm is worth $150,000. Well, I've lost $150,000 on my house. So I think that would be an easy way to do it. Just by running comps of a like house within the same county that's not near a solar farm.
If you're gonna do it, you need to put from the owner of the house current.
Current owner only? Yeah, if somebody buys
Because
it.
if somebody buys a house knowing that you're going by a solar farm, that's your own fault.
Yeah, it's a
That's
adjustment
your,
down.
you might be getting a good deal and
Yeah.
you're willing to deal with that. Yeah, I don't think it could be transferable past the current owner.
Right.
I mean, if you're gonna put it in.
But then also, I mean, 25 years from now, the person finally decides to sell. How in the world?
He suggested one. Chuck?
Yeah.
What if the house is inheritable? What if you pass it on to your son?
Well, that's change of ownership.
You better sell it to them. And then pay it off. Yes.
Once the house sells once,
Right, no,
it's
right.
a
Yeah.
issue at that point. That house is adjusted
But
on the
that's,
price at that point.
but
So, I mean,
going back to a mile, that's an awful lot of
That
houses
is a
that
lot.
would be in comp. That just throws a major, how in the world you even manage something like that? Now, houses within a close proximity, like they're abutted to it, I could see maybe dealing something with that. But a mile.
Well, I did cut it down. Adams County was 2 miles.
Well, the thing of it is, I mean, it's really not gonna be up to us. Put that in there, it's gonna be up to the buyer and his attorney and the solar company. I can't see them dragging us in. Because the solar company agreed to that. So what are we worried about?
We're not the ones that are gonna have to manage it, they're gonna have to be the ones. Yeah, because we're not gonna be going out there and say,
We're not gonna go out and say you get $10,000.
Yeah, if they wanna complain, we would say, talk to your solar company, or the company and your attorney. Work it out. The solar company agreed with it. Because it was in the ordinance.
so it'd be something that a homeowner, first generation or first current homeowners, when the project goes in.
Yeah.
should-
I mean, you can make it that they have to apply
Well, yeah,
within so much time after the place is built. And then they're on record. After the solar farm is built, homeowners in the area would have so much time to file an application for the guarantee.
Yeah.
And then you could,
Can we
then the
agree on this?
methodology is between
Some way, move on?
the solar company and
3 hours and 15.
the
Oh,
homeowner.
alright.
As
So
what
while
the
we
law
work
says.
on crap, what about that? Well, so if we put that large setback, they're gonna go to the homeowner that's nearby, and all that can be incorporated into their, well, because they don't know. I
They wouldn't
mean, you
know
don't
that.
know what the loss is, if there is even a loss.
But
I know we
still,
want to protect them, but it's gonna be hard to, like, to say, buying your property gonna go, we know something might happen, but we can't guarantee, how far your property or how much you gain, either way it will go. So I would think it needs to kind of be up to the landlord, the owners, and go back to the lawyers and let them settle.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we would be, I mean, if you're
We'd be out
there. And the other piece though, I still think we shouldn't always try to talk our way back from trying to protect it. We keep trying to talk our way back.
Because we're gonna be out there fighting all the time, our office will, trying to prove what the value is.
Right, that's not our job.
And it's
No,
not
we
in
can't
our
do it.
jurisdiction. Be doing it.
So, the ones that have that, I need to see how that's actually worded in the few counties that have that.
I didn't want something
more
there.
research, but I think it needs to be there. How it's actually done in the end, we can stipulate the rules and how it's actually done. That needs to be it.
I get what you're saying.
I think we're in the weeds, and
We gotta be sure.
I had to approve, we had to approve a Dollar General in downtown Upland, and
Right.
people's property values were affected, but we didn't get everyone reconciled with property value.
Yeah,
It's,
it could open up a can of
it
worms.
seems to me that there's a huge premium being put on the view that someone has from their property when they're making a recommendation that the solar panels have to be a quarter of a mile away. That's a pretty hefty premium that we're putting on this view.
Chuck, the spirit of it is, I understand what you're saying. The spirit of it is, though, is to try to protect the value of the property. And what about the poor soul who can't get out from under his piece of property because he's surrounded by a solar? There should be some provision to try to protect somebody that absolutely has, I mean, trust me, I do not want to look across the horizon. Whether they're 14 feet or 20 foot, depending on how they're selected of all these things, and nobody would want my place. But if I had to look at that, I might try to get out. I don't have to live in Grant County if you guys don't want us here.
But again, a lot of that's gonna fall back into development. I mean, that's gotta be whoever's looking at it, going, hey, we're surrounding this guy.
Yeah, we know.
So we don't have to fix it, right? It's the spirit of what they're trying to say.
You leave this out, and there's not much reason that they're gonna negotiate with one home.
You guys, I tell you, you can talk about this for the next hour, but I'm going home. I mean, I'm in favor of leaving it in there.
I'm not saying I'm not in favor of it going in, I'm just, it's gotta be something that we can enforce. Right?
Yes, we gotta be able, well.
We don't have to enforce it.
It's gotta be in there that the homeowners have an avenue.
How about I give him electricity off the grid? I said, how about giving him electricity off the grid for the house?
10 years.
Gas company used to do that, we give them a part of that.
All right.
Gary, you need to
Property values are going away.
So we gotta get this worded for protect the county, try to protect the homeowner. We do not need to be the one proving or unproving. It's gotta be, because they're within this area that they're probably gonna have to negotiate if the big setback is there. If the small setback, they go back to 250, the commission, then maybe it's more realistic to have that guarantee in there. So maybe we need to,
I think you need to send it to them with these things in there.
And
If they want to pull something out, they'll
then
have
it's on
to
them.
explain that.
It's on them. All right. So what was the last thing? One more little, where did I put it?
What did you decide? You leaving it in there?
I think we're gonna, but we gotta word it so it's correct. We'll look at some other ordinances, see what's legal, they'll leave an avenue for the homeowner. Private issues. That the county can't come up, and I don't think, you know.
That would at least give
It says
the
it's gotta be
homeowner
acceptable to us.
something to go on if they do sell it and they lost 50% on the value.
Where?
I mean, this is fairly well worded already.
I think we need to review
I
it,
think you need to
make
check it
sure
out.
attorney-wise that we're not. Aha. All right, one last thing. We talked about fees.
Yeah, but
I think what's that?
before you walk on away from that, so where are you gonna take that from here?
Well, we're gonna have to develop it out. All right.
I'll look at.
Okay. This is we talked about before. Fees. That seems to be middle of the road. I think we leave it alone, but the commissioners, if they want to adjust it, adjust it. Any questions?
Can you repeat something?
What's that?
Something about their APC.
Coming up to read?
Yeah. I didn't know if you wanted to read it all as you said.
My name's Mark Case, Davis Paramount.
Okay.
Just a question on that. So if we wanted to put in a solar, what I would consider the minor commercial, or
Okay.
no, I guess it'd be actually residential.
Right, residential, at your house.
Yeah, but if it covered more than an acre, because I've seen a few residentials put in.
Right.
That's probably, I'm gonna think maybe just pushing that limit.
Well, my first question would be where?
Right on.
Since they'd have to get a permit through us.
Well, like Steve Comer.
Where?
Steve Comer, 300
Steve
West
Comer,
and 26.
behind his grain bins.
Oh, now you got him. Now they're going to have to go inspect it.
I mean, that's,
I don't know that
you
we've got a
know,
building permit for.
100 by 40 feet, right? 1,000, it'd be 1,000 by 40 feet.
Yeah, I mean, we've had a record year for residential installation. Most of that is the house, the roof panels, and also small solar arrays in backyards.
Well, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
For
So
like
there
grain
is-
operations.
But most of those don't even come close to an acre.
They don't.
And those are all governed through the Indiana Residential Code. We base setbacks off of like accessory structures. And then the actual installation of those is in the Indiana Residential Code. So as far as residential goes, it's just pretty much, we do it like a normal accessory structure for setbacks, follow them. Kind of have to look on what you're in an array that big. I don't know that we've seen that go in.
That was probably 2 years ago.
Yeah. I mean, is that
I don't think it, probably not a whole acre.
probably less than an acre? But I'm just thinking if it was eclipsing that, if that number needs to be a little bigger because of that.
And, you know, again, with the residential at 1 acre, the minor commercial from 1 to 10, most of the ordinance don't have that minor. They go straight to major. So we've added that minor to actually give a discount for like the Madison grants and the kills. I'm trying to see whether somewhere in here I've got acres like 4,300 and some square foot. Yeah, 43,560 square foot is 1 acre.
Right.
So for a residential, it'd be a happy one. We haven't had, that we know of, one that's within over an acre.
But not quite the 10 to be a minor. Well, there is a little, well, over an acre. 1 acre to 10 to be a minor.
If it's close, I mean, there's gray areas. This is just kind of, again, just giving
You gotta
us.
have it cut off.
Yeah, the purpose, what the purpose is for too, yeah.
Yeah, Madison Grants was 3.5 acres.
Yeah,
That's, I mean, it's pretty big.
right, yeah, it's in 2 sections.
I don't think Cumberland is that big, but as far as.
It's probably not, it's probably not. Yeah.
This is just one strip and they're probably 200 foot long.
I'd say it's longer than that, but yeah, it's probably after that acre.
So Ryan, if we go back and update this draft 4 to a draft 5, we probably need to check with Kyle on some items, get that back out to us. I don't know if we're quite ready to have a public hearing. There's still a few loose ends probably. Do we, what is this, the 14th? Do we have it? Do we know if we have any business on the January 3rd? So we do have some business. Okay, so we have a rezoning scheduled for the first of the year. That meeting will incorporate election of new officials or officers, a rezoning application to deal with. Maybe if we just got a few things to tidy up, maybe. The wording on homeowner values be one of them. And then anything else, go read through your ordinances, especially when they bring out a new draft, I guess. Because like I said, we have some time, but we don't have a lot of time because we let's say at the next meeting, ideally we try to get it tonight, but if we still have a few loose ends that we can tidy up the January meeting, public hearing in February, then the commissioner do whatever they were doing, most likely come back to us or whatever. So we're pushing out a few months, and if the state of Indiana does something, we may not like what they do, so we need to keep pushing this to get it accomplished. I want to make sure we try to do the best we can.
Remember, the state of Indiana's motto was to promote.
Right, and that is one of the first things in there, that the county wants to be receptive with it, and we don't want to bend over backwards either, so we want to protect.
Depends on what solar. Minor. Acres.
Any other discussion? I do have some other things, but I'll bring that up at the January meeting. That might be just wording, whatever, making sure I understand something with the word. So moved. So moved. Hit the road.
That's a good thing. Oh, let's say it, like they just all disappeared.
You went to sleep?